Welcome, everybody, to another episode of PhinManiacs Live. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum. It has been a while. Yeah, about 2 months worth. So it's good to be back. I know that it's been a long time, but really there wasn't that much to talk about. So, but now we've got some stuff going on. Training camp is just around the corner, and I'm preparing to lose 5 pounds by melting out there in the hot sun. So, how you doing, buddy? It's been a while.
I'm doing good. About 60 days till football, so I'm liking that. And although it's been quiet and in some respects people would consider a boring offseason, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because when they dropped the suspensions before the 4th of July, there were no Dolphins in being suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. There's been no Dolphins being arrested. So right now it seems par for the course to be ready to go for training camp without any big losses on the team.
You know, that had completely slipped my mind. I probably should have put that on the block tonight, just because it's like, look, the Dolphins are behaving themselves. Woo!
Well, we've had some bad ones, so.
Yeah, let's see, Koamisi, Ray Malaluga, who else? Like, I'm sure there's more.
I remember when Rashad Jones got suspended. So it's just always like, this isn't the time of year you want to have one of your key players get suspended or get in legal trouble, because it's really hard to fix it now that the free agency's passed and the draft is passed. So you want your guys clean and ready to go.
Thank goodness. The culture change seems to have kicked in. It's like, no more Miami lifestyle. It's time to get to work. So what we're going to talk about tonight, ladies and gentlemen, there will be some training camp position battles. There will also be some talk about what the Dolphins can still do in free agency. The Dolphins have about a little over $14 million in cap space, which, while it seems tempting to go out there and grab a guy, and we will talk about some of those guys on the market still, but personally, I have my own thoughts on that, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and get to the position battles for training camp. Now, obviously, as always, the talk is that every position is up for grabs except for Ryan Tannehill's. He's the only one who's guaranteed. But in any case, what we're going to do is we're going to go through position by position real quick, and we're just going to think about what position battles we want to see the most and which ones we expect to come out on top at the end of it all. It shouldn't take that long, because there's not a whole lot to talk about except maybe at wide receiver, where it's crowded as all get out. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm actually writing about this too. So we're going to start with quarterback. So Ryan Tannehill, he's the one who's going to be starting. No question about it. Anybody else who thinks otherwise, you need to get your head out of that dream. It's not going to happen. Sorry. Ryan Tannehill is the quarterback. So we have 3 other guys who are currently competing for that backup job. That includes David Fales, Brock Osweiler, and Bryce Petty, who shockingly was signed right as I was covering a Walt Aikens Police Academy event a couple months ago. And I'm just like, really, Bryce Petty? The sandwich between Sue and Wake? Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I'm cool with that. So that's what's going on, is that there's a veteran backup battle going on in Dolphins training camp. So I'm going to ask you, Chad, who do you think is going to come out on top of that battle, and why?
Lewis, that's just no excitement level. My biggest concern for the whole season right now is this, because I don't even know, from a standpoint of job security, if Adam Gase or Mike Tannenbaum can afford to have Ryan Tannehill get hurt early on in training camp or this season, because I just don't see a quarterback on a roster that would make us a playoff caliber team whatsoever. So I'm trying to pick who's not as bad, not who's good. I just wanted to preface that. I feel like the least likely is Petty, and just because he's come in late, so he doesn't know the system as well, and he's never really done a whole lot in his career that would justify to me that he has a lot of ceiling to him left. So I feel like he's the least likely of the 3. I think David Fales has showed a little bit at the end of last year. He's a young guy, and so he probably has the highest ceiling of the 3, knows the system. So I feel like he has a little bit of an advantage right now, but on the flip side, he has no experience. So that's where Brock Osweiler comes in. He has played with Adam Gase, and he had the best year of his career with Adam Gase, as did Jay Cutler. So Not that means a lot. He had the best of his career with Adam Gase, but Osweiler is probably the best of the three if you had to start a quarterback tomorrow, because at least he has several games under his belt. So I think I'm going to go Fales, Osweiler, and Petty in that order for the likelihood of winning the number 2. But I don't think there's any clear favorite at all, which means training camp and preseason is going to be a critical deciding factor for those guys.
And I would agree with your assessment. David Fales is the obvious favorite right now, just because it's funny how much talk was made about David Fales. Like, he had his incredible performance at the end of last season. Well, incredible, relatively speaking, I should say. It's not like he lit the Bills up or anything. He did okay. He was very close to leading a comeback in the last seconds, but he threw an interception at the last minute. But in any case, 29 out of 42 is nothing to sneeze at. He did pretty well, all things considered. He ran the offense the way that Adam Gase wants to run the offense, and that goes a long way in the book of one Adam Gase. If you know the offense and you know everything that's supposed to be going on, you are going to get playing time. That's how Gase works. That's how Gase functions. So that's why David Fales has a big advantage. Not only does he have some kind of familiarity with Gase from his brief time in Chicago, there was actually talk about how Fales actually has the most mental capacity to run the playbook out of all the quarterbacks, not just the backups, actually Tannehill too. So Fales is definitely a cerebral quarterback. He knows where things are supposed to go, when it's supposed to happen. If he had the arm talent to go with it and the mobility and all that stuff, then he would probably be pushing for a starting job. But he definitely has the mental capacity. Now, Brock Osweiler has the quote-unquote pedigree, if you want to go there. He's got the prototypical body. He's tall. He's strong. He's got arm strength. He's just not technically sound. That's the problem. There was another report out about Osweiler, how they're having to fix his mechanics. He's already been in the NFL for a while. If you have mechanics that need to be fixed, then something is very wrong with you. And I can appreciate Adam Gase giving Osweiler an opportunity to compete and giving him a chance to prove that he still has something to offer. But if Gase is having to spend his time fixing Osweiler, then it's very unlikely he's going to make it. And as for Bryce Petty, like I said, I was shocked that they signed him to begin with. He's a camp body. I don't expect him to do much. If he does suddenly shine for whatever reason under Adam Gase, I will be very surprised. But you know what? In this case, it's not a bad problem to have, because you want to have a good backup. You do. And think about this. I don't think Matt Moore has been signed yet. I don't think anybody has touched him yet. So it's funny how long we were so high on Matt Moore and how special Matt Moore was, and all the people saying that Tannehill had no competition but yet wanted Matt Moore because he was better. It's like, if Matt Moore's better, why doesn't he have competition? But apparently no other teams believe that Matt Moore is worth the time of day, because nobody has touched him with a 10-foot pole. In fact, I haven't even heard any rumors about anybody being interested in Matt Moore, like remotely. So maybe he should give Adam Gase a call and be like, "Hey, I'm still available if you need me. I need a job quick."
Yeah, I don't think the quarterbacks on the roster strike me as being really any better than Matt Moore, but I think that, Matt Moore has been in there for the last 2 years now, having to play in games, and he's been up and down. And I think for the type of guy Adam Gase is, I think he wants a guy that executes very, very well, even if he's not as maybe talented from an arm strength standpoint. And Matt Moore he just isn't a very consistent quarterback. He's that quote unquote gunslinger mentality. Matt Moore likes to try to make plays, and that can tend to get you into trouble. And I think what Adam Gase wants right now, that's what I'm seeing anyway. What he wants in his number 2 quarterback is not a guy that's going to come in and win games. He wants a guy that's not going to go in and lose games. And so I think that's probably where Fales is at. I think you're right. I think he's a pretty smart guy, and that's the question: is can Fales execute the offense well enough to not come in and be such a deficiency you have no chance. But I couldn't say that those 3 quarterbacks are any better than Matt Moore either. But that's the NFL. Matt Moore is now into his 30s. He clearly has no ceiling. He's clearly not going to develop into a starter at this point in his career. And so when you get into that range, you're less desirable. I mean, most teams would rather have a young quarterback developing than have a guy into his 30s that is kind of reached his ceiling.
Yeah, and that you actually mentioned something very important there. Who has reached his ceiling? So before anybody goes off about how Ryan Tannehill's turning 30, or he already has, I'm not sure. I can't remember when exactly his birthday was. I think it passed. Yeah, I think he's 30 now.
30, yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. There's a difference, folks. Tannehill is 30, but he's still developing. You still see the improvement coming. So don't look at 30 as the end. Actually, a lot of quarterbacks actually reach their prime in the NFL these days when they hit 30. So there is that to consider.
Well, I mean, that's obviously the most polarizing debate out there right now, but I feel pretty strongly that Ryan Tannehill is in the top 15 in the league, and I think before he got hurt, he was closer to the top 10 range with how he was playing, and it's just not a very well known, fact about him that he is in that level of quarterback, and so I'm not really worried about his ceiling. I'm just worried about if he's continuing to play like he was playing with Adam Gase, that he was playing at a pretty high level, so much better than anything we were going to get in the free agency market or the rookie's going to give you. So I think he's the best quarterback we could get right now.
Oh, and in the chat room on YouTube, Chris Early, they all suck. Dolphins should have drafted Mayfield. Ha, Duke, very funny.
Yeah, I don't think he was very obtainable.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. But Miami had no way of getting one of the top ranked quarterbacks in those first round without trading, and so I don't feel like Miami has a team right now to give up a lot to move up, and I have no idea what it would have cost to move up, but an arm and a leg.
Yeah, so I didn't see a prospect in this draft that was noticeably likely to be any better than Ryan Tannehill is. Definitely not near as good as Ryan Tannehill at this point in his career. Will one or two of those guys develop into good quarterbacks? Probably. But keep in mind, there's going to be probably three of them that aren't starting quarterbacks within 4 years. And so which one are you getting? And I'd rather not roll the dice on a trade up. If Miami had been 4 or 5 picks higher and they wanted to take one of those guys to develop and double up on quarterbacks, I'm all for it. But I really, especially with a player like Minkah Fitzpatrick, I feel pretty good about what Miami did.
Agreed. And just for the sake of full disclosure, let's go real quick into the available free agent quarterbacks. We have TJ Yates, Mark Sanchez, butt fumble. Yeah. I always call him butt fumble. Ryan Mallett, Matt Moore, Jay Cutler, who does not want to be a backup. He's already proven that. And I think you had, there was a video clip going around of what's Jay, what are you going to do now, Jay? It's like, nothing. I don't want to work anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, take the money and run, Jay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And let's see, Scott Tolzien and Derek Anderson. Those are the guys who are available in free agency. Oh, and I should also mention Colin Kaepernick, but we'd need a whole show to talk about that mess. So I don't want to get into that too deep right now. So the only one who's really worth taking a flyer on talent-wise is Kaepernick, and he just has too much stuff surrounding him, whether you agree with him or not.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing in itself. So there's no free agent quarterbacks out there that are going to upgrade where we're at this point. So I think we got to roll with what we got, and it's my hope. Adam Gase is supposedly a guy that develops quarterbacks, and even though they don't ever give him young quarterbacks to develop, I'm hoping that he has been developing fails because I don't see him changing Osweiler or Petty all that much at this point in their career. So I'm hoping that Fails has been developing under Gase and has developed into a viable number 2.
Agreed. All right, so let's move on to the next position, running back. So Dolphins have a pretty decent stable of running backs. It's not a very deep one, but it is pretty talented from the ground up. You got here, of course, Kenyon Drake, who's going to be the workhorse, so to speak. Frank Gore, Kalen Ballage, and then you have other guys who are hanging out like Brandon Radcliffe, Sonoris Perry, and Buddy Howell. Now, obviously, the 3 top guys, Kalen Ballage, Frank Gore, Kenyon Drake. And I've talked with Kalen Balaj a lot these past few weeks. He's actually he's a great kid. He doesn't have a Twitter, folks. So by the way, if you didn't catch my tweet, that Kalen Balaj account that you guys have been following, that's not Kalen. So move on. He doesn't actually have a Twitter. He told me so. So anyway, so I like the running back core. It looks like it's got a lot of talent on it. I know that Gore is old, and apparently old running backs have nothing to offer in this NFL anymore, but which is a lie. But anyway, Kenyon Drake has all the speed, all the agility, all the tools you could ask for. He's a great running back out of the backfield. We've seen him do it. It's not like we're just projecting our wish list on him. He's shown what he can do. And he's done it in such a fast time that you almost forget that it happened. People still are hung up on Jay Ajayi, and you almost forget Kenyon Drake did even better than Ajayi did once he finally got a regular chance on the football field. Even his pass blocking, which at one point, and probably still is, honestly, viewed as Drake's weak point, even that Drake is getting to be decent in. I'm not going to look at him like he's one of the top pass blocking running backs in football, but he's serviceable. And honestly, that's where Gore comes in anyway, so it's not a big deal. Gore is a good blocker, so pretty much he's an okay blocker. He's not a great blocker. If we wanted a great blocker, we probably should have gone after DeMarco Murray. But Gore can do the good job blocking. He's a strong, tough guy. He can get the short yards. Kalen Balaj is a young rookie. He's got a lot to offer. He's got a lot more than I think most people are giving him credit for. So running backs look good. I don't think there's going to be much of a competition there, so to speak. The top three guys seem to be set in stone. The only things that we don't know for sure are, is there going to be a fourth one? And if so, who's it going to be between Howell, Perry, and Radcliffe? And honestly, just based on familiarity, I'm going to have to go with Sonoris Perry.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well there. I think Kalen Balaj is pretty high regarded by the organization right now. He's big and he's fast. And as you kind of know with me, Lewis, I think to be successful from a personnel standpoint in the NFL, you want to mix young, talented players with a good veteran. And Miami did just that. And so I couldn't be happier to put a rookie like Balaj and a young guy like Drake with Frank Gore. It's just the perfect mix you want. Those guys will learn a lot from Frank Gore. And to follow up on your comment, they did go after DeMarco Murray, and it was his job. DeMarco Murray could have been the veteran back, but he wanted more money. And right now Frank Gore's got a job. He's been with the team, and DeMarco Murray's still looking for a job. And
I think he signed somewhere. Hang on, let me check real quick.
I don't believe he did. Maybe, but not that I've heard.
Hang on, let me check real quick. Nope, you're right. He's still unsigned. Go figure.
Yeah, he's hitting that. That's a tough reality for NFL running backs because it's just a position. They're different than other positions, and once you hit 30 as a running back, you've got to be very special. Your value just plummets because it's just easier to draft somebody like Kalen Balaj to be your other running back who's got a lot cheaper and a lot younger. And I think DeMarco Murray's his best option here is going to be to wait and see who gets hurt in training camp and then probably get signed by a team at that point. But I don't like guys coming in late. I like guys in there that are working with the team. So that's Frank Gore over DeMarco Murray. So that's where it's at. But honestly, Lewis, I don't – unless Sonoris Perry makes a really good impact on special teams, being able to tackle on coverages and stuff like that, I don't think we're going to keep more than three guys. I think we'll just roll with three, and if somebody gets hurt, they'll just sign somebody who's available. I mean, their running backs are just so interchangeable these days when you're talking about backups, and you can go get a guy like maybe Orleans Darkwa or something like that to be your depth if you need to. And for that reason, I don't think Miami's going to keep four backs. They have some other positions that they need to keep that depth at, and I don't think running back's going to be it. It's going to be those three guys, and I think the team, I expect them to take Kenyon Drake off kick return, even though Kenyon Drake, he's got that speed, and he is a good kick returner. I think that's going to become Balaj's role now with Jakeem Grant to be the kick returner, those two guys back, and I think they're going to try to keep Drake focused on being the featured back, and you don't want to have your featured back getting hurt returning kicks very badly. So that'll be Balaj's role this year. And I think Frank Gore will clearly be the number 2 back. He'll probably be the third down back for blocking and the short yardage back. And I think they'll use Frank more than you might anticipate, and then they'll work in Kalen Ballage as the season wears on.
And Duke's in the chat saying that running back is deeper than many teams. I can agree with. Again, deep is a term based on what's the level of talent from top to bottom, not so much how many players you have. So, yes, I think I would agree with that. We're kind of projecting a little bit on Ballage, but when it comes to Drake and Gore, I don't think there's any questions. Okay, now here's something that I would like to run by you, Chad. There are obviously a lot more bodies in the running back pool than there are in the quarterback pool. So let's say for a moment, somebody winds up getting hurt. Let's say it's either Drake or it's going to be Gore. So if we need another running back, are we sticking with Sonoris Perry, or are we looking at some of these names? Because there are a bunch of names here. We got like Terrence West, Shane Vereen, Jamal Charles, Darren Sproles is still out there. Of course, DeMarco Murray we mentioned. Adrian Peterson is available. Go figure. And yeah, Darkwa. No, Darkwa. Hang on, wait. No, yeah, Darkwa's on the market. You mentioned him. So
I think it completely depends on who were to get hurt. I think if early on in this season, if Kenyon Drake has a season-ending injury, that's going to shake it up a little bit, because we seeing how things go in camp, you just don't know what you have yet in Kalen Ballage. You know he's big and you know he's fast, but how effective is he going to be in the offense? How well is he going to pick things up? How well can he pass block? Does he take care of the football? All those sorts of questions. And unless you're feeling really, really good about him, if Drake gets hurt early on, then I think you're probably going to put the money in, like DeMarco Murray, maybe Alfred Morris, somebody who you feel comfortable about giving 10 to 15 carries a game to, that is a capable back. If it's now Frank Gore or Ballage that get hurt, then I think you're going to want to go league minimum and go with somebody like an Orleans Darkwa that is just there for depth and is there to, maybe have 3 or 4 carries, if your backs get tired, but they're not going to be coming in to be more of a featured role.
So that's who you would go with. It would be like DeMarco Murray, because you said it depends. Okay,
well,
so let's say it's Gore. Let's say Gore gets hurt.
Yeah, if Gore gets hurt, it all depends on what they want for money. For this team right now, I don't want to pay a running back much more than the league minimum. I don't think you'll get DeMarco Murray for the league minimum, but you could get several guys out there, like maybe an Eddie Lacy or somebody like that, who can give you depth if it's Frank Gore that's hurt, and you just want another guy that can come in and slam the ball in the short yardage and pass block. But again, probably in terms of the market, I would want DeMarco Murray if Drake were hurt early, because I would feel like you could probably still have enough talent and enough tread left on the wheels for DeMarco Murray. You could give him 10, 15 carries a game and get a high production out of him.
Okay, that sounds like a good assessment. I like it. All right, let's moving right along. Wide receivers. This is going to be the long one, Chad. All right. So we have a ton of players at wide receiver, and they all want a spot. It's kind of sad to see so many talented players at wide receiver, and more than likely, there's only room for 5-6 tops. And we already know who at least the top 4 are going to be. So we have Albert Wilson, who we signed to be our talent-based Landry replacement, because when it comes to the actual talent level and the speed and intensity, it's Albert Wilson who you got. If you're looking for experience, you're going Danny Amendola, who is a big name, of course, New England, big-time pedigree. Then you got guys like, let's see, Malcolm Lewis that he's showing off in camp. He was showing off in minicamp. Drew Morgan, who is one of the stars from last year's camp. Francis Owusu is making a return. Leonte Carew, of course, we drafted him, and we know the story with him. I definitely say he's a dark horse at this point, just because he hasn't really done much. Then you have, of course, Isaiah Ford. He got hurt before he could really do anything. Rashawn Scott, he also got hurt, but he showed a lot when he gets on the field. Devontae Parker, he's one of the guaranteed ones. Kenny Stills a guaranteed one, and Jakeem Grant. So at the very least, we know for sure Parker, Stills, Grant, Amendola, and Wilson. That's all 5, which means that even if the Dolphins decide that they want a 6th one, that is a very, very crowded group. So let's just recap. So for fighting for the metaphorical and alleged sixth wide receiver position, you have Malcolm Lewis, Drew Morgan, Francis Owusu, Leonte Carew, Isaiah Ford, and Rashawn Scott. Chad?
I don't think we're going to keep any of them. I think we're going to keep 5 receivers, and I think the Dolphins are probably going to take one and put him on the practice squad. My guess would be like an Isaiah Ford will be signed to the practice squad, and we'll roll with our 5 receivers. And if somebody gets hurt, they will sign him off the practice squad, and they'll just roll the dice and say, if somebody signs Isaiah Ford, somebody signs him. For us to keep 6, one of those guys is going to have to look very good in camp and very good in the preseason, just because of what the roles are. And I mean, right now, Albert Wilson and Kenny Stills are going to be the primary guys working the slots, and they're going to be the guy that get fed the ball a lot in short yardage. Devontae Parker is clearly that vertical guy that can go up and high point catch the football. There's nobody on the roster that's going to challenge Devontae Parker for that role. And from a expert standpoint, a guy that really knows how to run routes and prepare for games, Amendola. I mean, those guys all kind of have those roles settle in. And, and the 5th guy is Jakeem Grant, and he is going to be the starting kick returner. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And that's usually what skill set you're trying to make the team as like a 5th or 6th wide receiver is, can I be the kick returner, or can I do well on special teams? And that's Jakeem Grant's job. So that makes a guy like, Leonte Carew, that's a really hard job for him to make the team, because Leonte Carew probably isn't going to be a special teams ace like a Walt Aikens or anything. And that makes him making that 6th wide receiver spot pretty tough, because can you put Leonte Carew on the practice squad? I don't even know if he's eligible at this point in his career. And if you have a guy like Isaiah Ford who is eligible for the practice squad, that makes him more viable, because he can essentially be your 6th wide receiver in that way without being one of your 53 roster slots. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's really my prediction, Lewis. I think we're just going to keep 5.
All right, we're keeping 5. So I can't really argue with what you're saying. It's just that I look at all this talent. It's like it feels like such a waste. Do you really think they're only going to keep 1 wide receiver on the practice squad?
It wouldn't shock me if we keep 2. I'd have to research. I don't know off the top of my head, Lewis, what the rules are, but I want to say you can only have
10 guys.
Isn't there a rule though on how long you can have been in the league? Like after 2 or 3 years, I don't know if you're allowed to be on the practice squad anymore.
Yes, what happens, there is a rule about that, and what happens is that in 2016, the NFL adopted a modification of the practice squad rules that allows up to 4 players per squad to have 2 accrued seasons. So if you have 2 seasons, you're still allowed to be on the practice squad.
Right. If you have 3, you're not then, right?
Yeah, if you got 3, then you're done. There's no question about it.
So I guess my question would be of the receivers, wouldn't Leonte Carew now be on his 3rd? I don't know where Morgan's at, how many years he's been in the league. So I just didn't know if those guys are even eligible. And so if they're not eligible.
Here's who's eligible. Okay, I see Malcolm Lewis has 1 year of experience. Drew Morgan has 1. Owusu has 1. Carew has 3, but he hasn't done much. I'm not sure if there's like a loophole for that, because he's been in the league technically for 3 years, but he hasn't actually done anything in those 3 years. So right. I'm not sure if that counts or not. Ford obviously has only 2 because he hasn't played yet. See, that's the thing, is that Ford is in his 2nd year in the NFL, but he hasn't played yet. He hasn't done anything.
Right.
And Rashawn Scott has 2.
Well, I guess my thought would be if they're practice squad eligible, I would say we'll probably keep, just because of their talent level we have, we'll probably keep 2 on our practice squad. Whether we'll be able to retain them is another question. I think probably 2 or 3 of those guys could probably make a number 4 at least, maybe even a number 3 wide receiver spot on some of these other rosters. And so if one of those guys is capable of making an active 53-man roster, they're going to get signed off our practice squad. That's just what's going to happen. But that's, we don't have the room. We've got a lot of talent at our wide receiver position, and I would say Ford is the one I'm most interested in. Leonte Carino, he's been on the team for 3 years, and he really
Duke,
hasn't.
actually, Chad, Duke just gave us a buzz in the chat room. Duke Carew only has 2 accrued seasons, so I guess he is practice squad eligible.
He'd be eligible. So all them guys then have an equal opportunity, I think, to try to make the practice squad. I don't think they're going to keep them as a 53-man roster spot. So I don't have a favorite. I think I'm probably most excited to see Isaiah Ford because I think he looked to have a pretty good skill set in college, and we haven't seen him at all. He was hurt. And so, it would be interesting to see how he performs in the preseason. I think with those other guys, it's kind of the same old story. They look good in training camp, and then they just disappear once it gets real. And so we'll see how they play through the preseason. But, they're being affected by the quarterback situation because these guys you're talking about, Leonte Carew and Isaiah Ford, they're not going to get very much time, if any, on the field with Ryan Tannehill. So they're going to be, trying to look impressive with Osweiler and Fales and Petty throwing the football, and that can change your dynamic as a receiver. If those quarterbacks struggle with accuracy or making poor throws, then those are the opportunities for those guys to try to flash out the door as well. So we'll see, but that's what I think.
It's hard for me to make a decision on this just because, again, so much talent. I know that you're excited about Ford. I am too, but I don't know why. I'm partial to Rashawn Scott. I just am. I feel like there's something there. I feel like if he got a decent opportunity, another opportunity, I feel like there's something special there. Because the few times that we saw him do something, it was a pretty impressive something. So I really, if it were up to me, my preferred roster, just because I know that, and here's the other thing we have to keep in consideration, Chad. 6 wide receivers doesn't sound awful because of the possibility of injury. Remember, Parker has injury problems coming out his ears. It seems like he's always hurting somewhere. So we would need a backup for Parker, which would mean that we would need the 6th guy to become the 5th guy. So there's that to take into account. And we've been talking this whole time about how Jakeem Grant could possibly wind up getting hurt because he's a little itty bitty dude and he has injury problems. So, well, he doesn't have injury problems. He's just small, and we expect him to get hurt at some point. And then you have Danny Amendola, who has a history of getting hurt, not recently, but he does have a history nonetheless. So it feels like the best bet for Miami would be to have 6 wide receivers, and I would make the 6th one either Scott or Ford, and then I would have 2 guys stashed on the practice squad, which would be the difference between Ford, Scott, and either Drew Morgan or actually Malcolm Lewis. That's who I would have stashed on the squad. And we have Duke actually calling in now, so let's go ahead and get his thoughts. Hey, Duke, how you doing?
What's up?
All right, so I know you've been listening in, so I'll just go ahead and let you jump in.
I'm just listening. I was called in. I think what I was going to say, I was listening to what Chad was saying. One of the things about the preseason, it's hard for us to judge that, they're going to be watching guys like Carew and Ford and some of the other guys with quarterbacks, so they're not as good. But they're watching for their route running. So even if they, don't catch a pass, they're looking to see, what are these guys doing? Are they running the right routes? Are they doing the right depth? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing there? Even if they don't catch the pass, or even if they don't get to even if they don't look good with particular quarterbacks, they can be judged separately. Now, the fans will see this.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Duke. The route running is probably going to be a major factor in who gets to keep the job, because it's not so much. It's kind of funny because, remember, the New England Patriots don't get by on talent, so to speak. They get by on, are you where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there? And I think that's the kind of offense that Adam Gase wants to run here with the guys he's bringing in. He's not bringing in guys who are superior, who are physically superior than other guys. He's looking for guys who are going to do what they're told. So that could, even if they don't catch passes in training camp, if they run the correct route and the quarterback just misses, I don't think they're going to get punished for that. I think that's going to be on the quarterback.
Well, yeah, they're watching for particulars for what the receivers are doing. because I mean they know this is the kind of stuff that's the time of year. You're not going to be playing with the best. I mean, and every team knows this. That one receiver that's but and that's what camp is for. I mean, they're watching for particular. They want to see receivers. How they run the route. That's when they talk about watching Jakeem Grant in mini camps and all this stuff, and they're talking about people are talking about yes, mini camp and all this stuff. Well, they're not looking for production. Fans are looking for production. They want to say, Tannehill threw 4 touchdowns in camp today. Well, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for, all right, this is the play I want ran. Can the receivers run where they're supposed to go? Are they supposed to run at the right depth? And, I think Adam Gase wants that. We know that he's mentioned Kenny Stills particularly, and people talk about how Adam Gase really likes Kenny Stills. And we know that Kenny Stills, from what has been reported, is very meticulous. He runs routes to the millimeter. He doesn't go over a yard or however much. He's very particular. And that's what Gase wants with that. And I think that's probably kind of what Gase likes and why he's, probably going to be featured a lot more this year. But, a guy like Grant, I think we heard a lot about him, is that I think he's improved in these areas, and he's worked on these areas that we will never see in camp. We'll never see in preseason because we don't know what's on that play sheet. We don't know what he's supposed to be doing, but they do. So, I think that's some of the stuff they're going to be looking for. And one of the things I noticed about the receivers, and maybe this is just something peculiar that I noticed, and it may not be anything, but they had a video on NFL.com several weeks ago of Danny Amendola highlights. And they were showing, they were running an out route or some kind of route. And Devontae Parker was in the background, or somebody else, I think it's Parker, and they were showing Amendola. And one thing that I noticed was when he got to his break and he turned, and as the ball was coming, he kind of hopped. And I noticed it because I thought, I don't know if this is just something he picked up in New England, if this is one of those little veteran tricks, but if you watched Parker when he made the catch, he caught the ball, and he had to make a wide turn. Of course, he's a big body guy, but he had to make a wider turn to get upfield. Amendola hopped into the route. So when he caught the ball, his footwork was to the point he was kind of hopping to go. It was almost like, how a running back will jump step. It was kind of like that at the end of the route. And I watched him do that a couple of times, and that was something I kind of noticed. But maybe that's something, that's going to rub off on these guys. Like, hey, instead of, when you get to a route, be prepared to turn upfield immediately, and he was. And if you look at guys that play for New England, what do? They catch these short routes, and it's not like, Jarvis Landry where he catches the ball and
he runs backwards to try and make more yards.
Yeah, they get the ball and they turn upfield and they get chunk yard even on a little short play. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up. It's just something that happened next in that video. He just kind of hopped into it to the way he hopped so that he could, as soon as he landed, his feet hit, he was ready to turn vertical as opposed to rounding out or finishing that. So, maybe that's one of those things that guys like Grant, maybe even Wilson can pick up on, and they can say, hey, do this in upfield because those guys are really fast.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, and I'm gonna honestly just skip over the whole wide receiver free agency thing here, just because A, there's so many names available, and B, just because I don't think there's any room for it anyway. So let's just go ahead and move on past that. Let's go ahead and switch to the tight end position. So we've got a bunch of those available now. We've got the guys like the 2 new rookies, Durham Smythe and Mike Gesicki. And we have Gavin Escobar, who was at one point a very highly touted prospect. He hasn't really done much since then, though, so that's kind of a shame. And, of course, we have Marquise Gray, A.J. Derby, and Thomas Duarte. So, and by the way, Duarte is practice squad eligible, so if they decide they want to keep him around, they can. I don't think I would at this point, just because. But in any case, there's actually a little bit of a competition there, like a legit starting level competition, because between Gesicki, Smythe, Gray, and Derby, you have 4 guys who are going to be fighting for 3 spots, and one of those spots is going to be the starting position. We all expect Gesicki to eventually become the number 1 guy because he's the one who has the most potential as a pass catcher, but I think Smythe is the one who's the more balanced option. And, of course, we have Gray, who actually is experienced and knows how everything is supposed to go. And he has, when given the opportunity, shown that he can play football. I still remember that one pass that he caught from Ryan Tannehill, where Tannehill had to roll out, get away from all these sorts of people, and he was just happened to be at the right place, the right time, and he caught the ball. It was honestly a really awesome thing to watch. And I think Duke popped out of the call, but anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you then, Chad. So what about the tight end position?
Well, the rookies are obviously going to be, I think, having the higher priority. It's just going to be about how quickly they develop. I really think that Gesicki will be the primary tight end on opening day. I think they'll get him ready. They'll put a lot of time and effort to get him ready. He has, from a talent standpoint, the ability to stretch the field. I don't think any of the other tight ends on the roster can effectively stretch the field like he can. And they're going to want to take advantage of his athletic talent. So that's why I think he'll be in there. I honestly think they're going to keep all 4, Lewis. I really do, because they've got 2 rookies, and rookies can be unpredictable. And I think Marquise Gray has proven that he can be an all-around tight end. And I think Derby has shown some potential. And I think, as I was mentioning earlier, why I think they're only going to keep 5 wide receivers is because they have some other positions that they're not quite settled on where they want to go into the season with. And I think that'll be a surprise that they keep 4 tight ends.
All right. Well, so you think Gesicki's going to be the starter because he can stretch the field?
I think they're going to try to get him on the field a fair amount. The question is going to be how well does he develop his game? How well does he know the playbook? How well does he block? If he's struggling, then you're going to see him used situationally. So you'll see guys like Derby and Gray maybe playing more snaps when they'll be bringing Gesicki in and out in certain formations. If Gesicki develops really well, then if he has a really good camp and he looks like this is the guy that's going to be on the field 70-80% of the snaps, then they'll probably keep 3 tight ends. But if Gesicki or Smythe appear to struggle a little bit with picking things up, or how they are technically blocking and running routes, then I think they'll go 4.
All right, and Duke, who's your starting choice? Duke? I know he's there. I popped him back in the call.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, my phone's doing funny things. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. So I was asking who's your choice for starting tight end? Not necessarily who you think should be, but who do you think will be when season rolls around?
A.J. Derby and Marquise Gray will start.
Which one over the other? Is there one?
It depends on what they're doing. I don't think I'm not going to list it in terms of starters, position wise. I think they play 2 different positions. I think I watched I think it was Durham Smythe, a press conference he did, and he talked about he's learning just the Y, whereas Gesicki's learning the Y, the F, and a few other positions. I can't remember what he mentioned. I think that's how you're looking at it with Gray. Gray is your strictly Y. They're going to use him in the backfield as well, where I think Derby's going to be kind of the Gesicki kind of mentor guy to stretch the field and be more of a receiver. But I think they're going to slowly working the rookie and get them in there. I mean, you've got a guy like Gesicki who is extraordinarily talented, who's going to win jump balls, who's going to do some things that the other guys just simply can't. But at this point, I mean, just throwing him in to start, I think, is a little premature. They'll work him in. I think he'll start out and get him, 10 to 15 snaps the first few games, and they'll work it up to about 30 snaps, and then, toward the end of the season. Well, I wouldn't sleep on A.J. Durban. I thought he played well toward the end of the season. I think the quarterback situation kind of threw him off a little bit, but I think that overall, I think he was doing well. I think Gray was underused. He's not a guy that's going to stretch the field, but he's a reliable set of hands and can block very well. So I like those guys to start, bring in the two rookies off the bench, let them work in and just and do what they do. Slow cook them. Don't let them put too much on the plate to begin with. And I think we'll be fine with tight end position. I actually like it more than probably a lot of people.
I don't disagree with that. I like the tight end position a lot too myself, just because there's a lot of talent there. I don't want to get rid of Gray or Derby, and I want to keep both Gesicki and Smythe at the same time. So, and I know that Adam Gase has been wanting a tight end for a long time. Like, he keeps trying. He went out and got Julius Thomas because he wanted somebody he was familiar with who could actually play tight end. Now, obviously, Thomas fell on his face and the offense didn't get to actually do much with him, but that's another story altogether. And by the way, that makes another Dolphins free agent who hasn't even been sniffed since the offseason started. So that just goes to show you what teams think about these guys. So
and I think people need to kind of lower the expectations for Gesicki. The guy's very talented. He seems like he's a pretty bright guy. He seems like he's a guy that wants to play well, wants to succeed. So I think he's got the drive there. But rookie tight ends are just notoriously, they don't produce a lot. You're not going to see, Gesicki is a guy I think you can legitimately expect to become a kind of a 10-touchdown, 80-catch, feature tight end, but he's not going to be that as a rookie. I think expectations for him, a high level of expectation for at least for touchdowns, would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5. Maybe 40 to 50 catches. Just something like that. I mean, he's not going to come in and just dominate right off the bat. They just don't, not at that position. And so he's a guy that in 2019, 2020, we expect to see dominating the league. But this year, just kind of, just let him simmer. Don't try to rush into it with expectations. It was kind of the same thing with Charles Harris. My goal for him was, I think 4 sacks would have been a good range for him. He got 2. 4 would have been the limit. I didn't think he was going to come in and dominate because we had, depth at that position. He was going to be a rotation guy, and I think that's the same with Gesicki. Now, hopefully he can exceed it, but I think fans need to kind of ease off this, Gesicki's going to dominate kind of stuff, because it's probably not going to happen early on. They're going to get him in the game. They're going to use him in the red zone. They're going to find ways, because he's such a mismatched guy, but it's going to take a while. I think he even admitted that his head was kind of spinning a little bit, learning all the stuff that he had to do. So, and it wouldn't surprise me if Smythe didn't get more snaps as a rookie, simply because they use him as a blocker more.
So safe to say the Mike Get Sexy hashtag has kind of come out a little too soon, probably.
What's that now?
I think that the hashtag Mike Get Sexy kind of came out a little too early.
I mean, it's one of those things you gotta understand what it's the long game, especially with tight ends. I mean, last year's class is pretty good, and Evan Ingram came in and he played pretty well, but they used him a lot as a wide receiver, and so if you're expecting Gesicki to come in and play like Gronk right off the bat,
that ain't gonna happen.
If you're expecting him to come in, I mean, I know people. I don't know what fans are expecting of a tight end position. You want an elite guy there, But I mean, there's not a lot of them.
The problem is that everybody triggers elite with Rob Gronkowski, like nobody else exists. It's just Gronk.
Well, and you got a guy like Travis Kelce too, and you've got these guys that can play the tight end position pretty well. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's still a when it comes to the passing game, it's still a receiver dominated league, and so I mean, you've got Stills and Albert Wilson and Parker, who are probably going to be your top three targets. Amendola is going to be in there. It depends on how they use those guys. So, I mean, unless Tannehill's throwing 600 to 700 attempts this year, there's probably just not going to be a lot there for the tight end. I think where you might see a difference is, like last year we saw Jarvis Landry score 9 touchdowns, and I think every single one of them came like at the goal line. I don't think he had any long touchdowns. They were all red zone. I think that's where you're going to see, especially with some of the trouble that Parker's had with just, some of the things that I've seen. I think that's where they're going to put Gesicki in and even Derby and say, all right, look, just go post this guy up. Tannehill just throw the ball high. If they get it, great. If they don't, we're good. And you're going to see that. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the tight ends with a low catch total, higher touchdown per catch than the receivers. They're going to use those receivers to work the middle of the field, to get those chunk yards, to get first down, and then the tight ends are just going to be like, look, we're going to go with a basketball team at the goal line, just throw it up, let these guys score. So, I just think Gesicki was, higher touchdown total than even the expectations that I said, but on fewer catches, 5, 6, 7 touchdowns on 40 catches or something like that. Just, where you see a guy like Parker get 4 touchdowns on 80 catches or something.
Well, if Gesicki turns out, I have to train myself to say it because I had been saying Gesicki for a long time. He clarified it's Guy-Sicki, so I have to be ready. So if Guy-Sicki turns out to be the quote unquote Devontae Parker replacement or the guy going with Devontae Parker in the red zone, I would be just fine with that. I don't mind the whole heave it up prospect as long as Tannehill can, because that's one of the few things that we can actually criticize Tannehill on. His lobs into the end zone sometimes go a little where they're not supposed to. So hopefully that can be fixed.
And I've seen some people talk on Twitter and other places about how the fade routes should be taken out of the playbook. They don't even like the fade route. But I said in the 2016, I said this on Twitter, or maybe it was on direct messaging or wherever, I don't remember. And I know that Landry had such a big following, but I would have absolutely traded Landry to move into a position to get a guy like O.J. Howard. That was my thought process in that draft. Now, O.J. Howard fell further than I thought he was going to, so it wouldn't have even been that difficult to move up and get him. But I thought to myself, you've got, you can use the tight end in the slot. So you've got a guy that's 5'11" that runs a 4.7, or you can get a guy that's 6'6" that runs a 4.5. So, now we've got that. So, and I tweeted, I think when Gesicki was drafted, that I said that's the Jarvis Landry replacement.
We've got like 3 of those now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ultimate game. I mean, that's not this year. I think you're going to see Amendola and Wilson. I think it's all these guys kind of collectively get those catches that were Landry's targets. But next season and the season after that, I think Gesicki, if he plays out the way we hope he plays out, is going to be that guy. Because he's going to, Tannehill likes to lean on his slot. And so now you've got a guy that you can throw out in the slot that's, are you going to put a guy like Bobby McCain, who's a good nickel corner, but it's, 5'9"? You're going to put a linebacker or a safety who's not big enough or slow or too slow to handle a guy like Gesicki. I think that's what they want to go for. And so, that's what he's ultimately going to be is, he's going to be that big slot that, gets those across the middle catches. This won't be this year. It'll be next year.
Yeah. So as far as the training camp battle goes, it's probably going to, I would say it's going to be all four of those guys coming out, with guys like Escobar being the odd man out. And for anybody who's wondering who's available on the market, I'm pretty sure that we can always go back and get Fasano and Julius Thomas if we need to. Oh, and Antonio Gates, he's there too. So, but we're not going to need that. So we'll just go ahead and move on and pretend that that's not a thing. All right. So moving right along, offensive line. This is the strongest Dolphins offensive line that we have had in a very, very long time. And oh my God, I'm so happy to be able to say that. So now, obviously, this is going to be a depth battle for the most part, just because we seem to have our five guys set up straight up. So Daniel Kilgore is probably going to be the center for the Dolphins this season. And then you have, of course, Josh Sitton at the one guard position, and you're going to have Jesse Davis at another one. And then you have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, Juwan James at right tackle. And after that, it becomes a battle to see who is going to wind up being the main depth. So that means that we have guys like Mike Matthews, who actually has quite an NFL pedigree, but he hasn't actually done anything with it yet. You have he's a center, by the way. Connor Hillen, who's another center. Jake Brendel, who can play center and guard, and he did a decent job spelling Mike Pouncey last year when given the opportunity. And then you have a whole bunch of tackles. David Steinmetz, Robbins Joseph, and Zach Stirrup. Sam Young, who we re-signed, and I think he's probably going to be the primary right tackle. I don't think there's a question about that. Eric Smith, who's been seen around the team a lot, and he might actually be a surprise. So there's a lot of players here who's going to be pushing for a depth spot. So I guess the question becomes at this point is, how many offensive linemen are you keeping for this season? Because we have the five starters. How many more do we have behind them? And I'll start with you, Chad.
Well, one player that impacts it is definitely Jesse Davis, because he's capable of playing tackle. And so you can use Jesse Davis at guard. And I think if Juwan James or Laramie Tunsil get hurt, you can bring Jesse Davis in to be a tackle if need be, if Sam Young has an issue. And so that I think will allow the team to maybe carry one less tackle, because I think Ted Larson's a very, very functional guard.
I forgot about him. Was he even on this roster? Because I'm looking at the Dolphins roster. I must have missed it. Oh yeah, Asiata and Ted Larson. Duh.
Yeah. So I think as of right now, unless there's a big change in camp, I think Ted Larson's probably the number 3 guard on the team. And so I think you can still have a very solid line and move Jesse Davis to say right tackle and bring in Ted Larson to be your right guard and go that route. I think Asiata is getting into an important training camp. You know, he's had a couple years now, and so you're expecting him to be a starting caliber or starting capable player. And if he's not getting there, is it time to move on if he can't do it this season? So I think they'll probably keep 4 tackles, counting Jesse Davis not as a tackle. So one of those guys, maybe it'll be Eric Smith, but one of those guys you mentioned is going to make the team as the 4th tackle, and they'll have Jesse Davis be the real 4th tackle, but they'll probably keep one more on the roster.
So let's count because the how many guys are we keeping? We have the 5 starters. Jesse Davis is one of them, so he counts as
8. Maybe even 9, but 8. You're going to have a backup center.
Larson, Young, and who's the 3rd one?
I think the question is, how comfortable are they with Larson being the backup center? If they're not, one of those guys, maybe Brendel or one of those guys is going to make it as the backup center on the team. And so that'll be one of them. So I'd say 4 tackles and 3 to 4 guards, assuming one of those 3 to 4 guards can be the backup center.
All right. So 8 is your best guess. Duke?
Well, I think you got 5 starters. I think they like Larson because he can play guard or center, so he's kind of a versatile guy. Sam Young is your swing tackle. I like Eric Smith as your right tackle. I thought he played well last year, and I was kind of, in a way, it's having him battle for the starting right tackle spot. And then it becomes a battle. I think those are your 3 guaranteed backups.
Eric Smith is a guaranteed backup?
I think so. I mean, they really like him. They put him on the active roster. Unless somebody else just shows him up. He's your backup right tackle. He's like 6'4". I mean, he's a guy that can move inside the guard. He's got a lot of potential. I wouldn't get rid of him. I thought he showed enough last year. He was just on IR or whatever that list is, and just wasn't able to play. But so one of the things, like Jake Brendel plays special teams. He's on the kickoff unit, so that might.
And he did get some back. He did get some backup time when Pouncey went down last year for a few plays.
Yeah, I think that. I think really. I mean, it just depends on what the other tackles do. I think Eric Smith is a tackle, so I think he and Sam Young are your back tackles. I think Larson is your backup interior guy who can play any of the three interior spots. And then it's a battle of really what do you want that ninth guy to do. So, I mean, I think Eric Smith, they would keep him. I don't know if he'll be active on game day. I think he'd be the inactive guy, but I think he's the guy that they like. I don't think they want to take the chance to lose him on the practice squad. I feel like Asiata. I think he, last year they tried him at right guard. I don't think that was his natural spot. He played left guard in college. I think that's more of a natural spot for him. Obviously, he's not going to get to start there because of sitting, but he is a guy that you can put there and let be the backup left guard because sitting only there for it's a 2-year deal, and so he's not a guy of the future. And I've even seen people suggest that Asiata could play center. I don't know about that as much, but that's a position, a possibility there. I think center might be something they look at in the draft, depending on how Kilgore does, how he plays. So my 9 offensive linemen that I would keep are your 5 starters: Young, Smith, Larson, and then I'm going to go with Asiata. But really, it's a toss-up. That's it. That's my final spot.
Well, that's going to be, that's where I'm going to have to be about that, just because my opinion, because here's the thing, Asiata can still be on the practice squad, and considering how he struggled last year, just trying to even get on the field, I don't think there are going to be like a whole bunch of teams lining up to claim him. So he could probably be stashed safely on the practice squad and nobody would really bat an eyelash. If I'm going with backups and I am picking 9 offensive linemen just because our offensive line is so notorious for getting hurt. So my offensive lineman is the 5 starters, and if somebody gets hurt, I don't want to say when because I don't want to jinx it, but if somebody gets hurt, then I have Sam Young, who is the swing tackle, going wherever he needs to go. And I'm going to go with Ted Larson. He's another veteran. He can do the guard and the center position if necessary. I'm going with Jake Brendel just because I know that Brendel has something to offer. He did okay when he can play guard too if necessary, but he did a pretty decent job spelling Mike Pouncey when Pouncey went out. In fact, you could barely even tell if there was a drop off, if there even was one. So if the worst that Brendel can do is be Pouncey when he's at like 70%, then that's decent enough for me. I can deal with that. And that just leaves the 4th guy. And again, it's such a hard toss up just because there's so many players who are going to be fighting for that spot. I do know that it needs to be a tackle, because if we're keeping Larson and Brendel, we need at least another tackle. And I don't want to have to use Jesse Davis as a tackle just because I want him to be able to focus on becoming the best right guard he can be, because if he winds up being good, I don't want to have him moving around. I want him to be good at what he does. We tried that whole Dallas Thomas experiment. Oh, Dallas Thomas can play everywhere. Can he play anywhere good? No? Okay, versatility doesn't mean much then. You got to be good at what you do. So I want Jesse Davis to focus on being a guard. So with that in mind, I would actually go ahead. It's kind of a toss-up right now for me between Eric Smith and actually Zach Stirrup, because supposedly they really like what they can do from him. They can get from him. So if I had to choose one, I would pick Eric Smith. But for right now, that's going to be my 9 guys: the 5 starters, and Eric Smith, Sam Young, Ted Larson, and Jake Brendel. So, and
I I think they have to look at a fourth tackle because, I mean, they have to entertain the possibility that Juwan James will not be back. I know they've been back on the option this year, and they probably would like to sign him long term. He is a talented player, but if he gets hurt again, or if he just is an average guy, then I can see them parting ways. And so I think they want a guy, and I don't think that's Sam Young. I think they like Sam Young. He's the swing guy. He can play left or right tackle if you need him to, but he's not. I don't think they'll look at him as a long-term option. So that's why I'll take Eric Smith, because I think he's a guy that you can say, all right, I'm looking at him as a potential replacement at right tackle, and I don't want to lose that. Because if you get that, because, I mean, I think this past draft was the first draft in Dolphins history that they didn't take an offensive lineman. I mean, let's just suppose, let's optimism game here, and suppose that Aviata steps up and can play good enough to eventually become a starting left guard. So your offensive line would be, you got Tunsil, Aviata, and we'll worry about center later. And then you've got Jesse Davis, who is an undrafted free agent that they signed off of the practice squad, and Eric Davis, an undrafted free agent. So half of your 60% of your offensive line was after the fifth round or was undrafted. So, you know, considering the draft capital that they've used on offensive line, would it not be wonderful if they could get starting guys that just happened out of nowhere? And so, I mean, I think they're going to start looking at that kind of contract stuff. And you know what? You know, unless Juwan James just comes out and has like an all-pro kind of year, they're going to say, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to move forward, and Smith is the guy.
All right. Well, I guess that's going to be it, just because I don't see there's any. I don't think there's any offensive linemen here that can really be looked at as far as free agents go. Because I recently got a tweet the other day about, well, why didn't the Dolphins look harder at offensive line? I don't trust them. It's like, I don't see anybody out there that I would really want to go out there and give a ton of money to. Our big offensive lineman signing was Josh Sitton, and I'm fine with that. Like, the only guy I could really think of would be Will Beatty, who was formerly of the Giants. And it's or the Eagles rather, and it's just I don't think I want to go there right now. So go ahead and move on here. We're gonna go ahead and switch to the defensive side of the ball now, because we're gonna get through the whole roster here, folks. We're gonna go through this pretty swiftly. All right, so cornerback battle. Let's go ahead and talk about that. We got a lot of guys there that I didn't think we would have, but let's go ahead and go through the list here. So obviously we have our starting caliber guys, which means we have Tony Lippett, Cordray Tankersley, Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain. And then you have guys like Cornell Armstrong, who was just drafted, Taviz Calhoun, Torrey McTyer, and if you count Walt Aikens as a cornerback instead of a safety, then you have him, and then you also have Jordan Lucas, who was drafted, I believe, during the Philbin era. Or am I wrong about that? I don't remember anymore. It feels like the lines between... Go ahead.
It was a 2016 draft. That was Gase's
okay. Yeah, it still kind of blurs a little bit. I'm trying to remember who's left over from the Philbin era. So, in any case, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about that real quick. Okay, obviously we have Lippett, Tankersley, Howard, and McCain, who are the top four guys. And then you have other guys here. There's a lot of Miami needs extra corners. We know this for a fact. They're not going to get by with just four guys. It's just not going to happen. So Lippett, Tankersley, Howard, and Bobby. Those are the top four guys that we know for sure. But we're going to need at least like 5 or 6 corners. So that leaves Jalen Davis, Jonathan Alston, Cornell Armstrong, Taviz Calhoun, and Torrey McTyer and Jordan Lucas. I count Walt as a safety, so I'm not going to go with him right now. So, Chad, there's a few names here that we have to look at. Who's going to make the roster at corner?
Well, I think the first question is who's going to be the number 2 guy on the boundary of the outside? And right now it was Tankersley last year. Is that going to be? That's going to be probably one of the hottest battles in camp. Is Tony Lippett versus Cordell Tankersley to be that other starting corner on the outside? I think, and there's even some rumors Bobby McCain will get in on that. And Bobby McCain didn't play bad in limited time on the outside. So obviously they think very highly of Bobby McCain with what they just did for him in a contract. And so he's going to be on the field in some capacity. So I think that's kind of that's going to be where it starts, is who's going to win the position battle between Lippett and Tankersley, because I think Tankersley's capable of playing in the slot. And I don't know if Lippett is as well as able to do that. So
so wait, are you saying that Bobby's going to be on the boundary?
No, I think there's a lot of crossover on the team. Walt Aikens can play the boundary in a pinch. You can't forget about Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's fully capable of playing the slot corner position.
I hadn't considered him because I was still safety in my mind.
Yeah, so I think Minkah is unbelievable. Well, I'm extremely high on Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I think he'll start out of the gate and he'll be on the field someplace almost all times. And so I think why I'm bringing these up is you can have somebody like Cordell Tankersley be the backup slot, or you can have Minkah Fitzpatrick be the backup slot guy to Bobby McCain if Tony Lippett's looking pretty good, if he's recovered from his injury. Because even if Cordell Tankersley wins the starting boundary job, if Tony Lippett's looking good, you can feel good about maybe moving Tankersley into the slot corner if Bobby McCain gets hurt and bringing Lippett in on the outside. The flexibility of these guys will affect these lower guys on the roster, like guys like Armstrong. Are they just going to be practice squad guys or not? That's the real question. We're going to be keeping 4 safeties if you count Minkah as a safety, which I would. So, Minkah and I think Rashad Jones will be your primary starting safeties. But obviously you still got TJ McDonald, who I think they'll want to be getting in on the field in some hybrid type looks. You might see him in certain situations on the field with 3 safeties. And Walt Aikens is going to make the team as a special teams player. And that's what really is going to come in with these guys like Lucas and Aikens and Armstrong, is where do they fall in on special teams. Because of the cross ability, I think Miami can probably get away with maybe keeping one less defensive back because of the ability of guys to move around a little bit, because McCain can play the boundary if need be. So if Tony Lippett struggles, for example, like his injury has changed his talent level or his speed or quickness, he's just not looking very good, then it very quickly may become Bobby McCain is your backup to Tankersley on the boundary, and Minkah Fitzpatrick becomes your slot corner if Tankersley gets hurt. And so that movement around is going to be interesting in camp. So I think for sure, the number 1 corner is going to be Xavier Howard. For sure Rashad Jones is going to be on the field no matter what. That guy's just a complete monster. I don't know if you've been following the offseason, but Rashad Jones looked absolutely fantastic. He looks in such good shape. And so I'm expecting, if he's healthy, that another all-pro caliber year out of him. And so I don't know. I think the rookies always have a little bit of an advantage. And so I would say Armstrong's going to make this team more than likely as either a 6th defensive back maybe, or as a practice squad player. I think that's about where I'm at. I think the lower guys are going to probably not just be competing for the roster spots, but there's, once you get past the top 4 corners on this team, they're competing against all the other guys in the league too. And so as cut downs start to happen, the question is going to be is our 5th and 6th corner better than everybody else's 5th and 6th corner? Because if they're not, it wouldn't shock me if they don't keep anybody and they sign somebody else. That's typically what I watch for at the corner position.
And there are options out there. So just to be clear, there are guys out there who could be brought in if necessary, like guys like Jeremy Lane, Pac-Man Jones, Bashaud Breeland, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, and Kayvon Webster, although his injury would probably put him on the PUP list just to start the season, but he is pretty decent. What do you think, Duke? There's a lot of guys who are going to be fighting for spots.
Well, I mean, generally, the team has kept 10 defensive backs.
But that includes safeties, right?
Yeah, 10 defensive backs. Usually it's been 6 corners and 4 safeties. What Chad brought up was the fact that now you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, I mean, he was the 4th overall cornerback recruit as a high schooler. So he's got that ability to play the cornerback position. Now, I know the Dolphins listed him as a safety, but I mean, when you have a high draft pick like that, I think it's kind of the same thing with Jalen Ramsey. As I said, everyone expected him to play safety, and I said, well, if you draft a guy that high, put him at cornerback first. It's more important. And I don't think they're going to do that with Fitzpatrick. They're not going to say, here, you're going to go there and battle for the starting cornerback spot. What that does is that gives you the option, in my opinion, to keep a 5th safety and only keep 5 corners, because he is, in effect, your 6th corner. And if you have 2 other safeties in McDonald and Jones that are on the field and you need to get him on there, then you can just bring that corner off, and Fitzpatrick is that guy. He's the guy that can say, all right, we're going to line him up on tight ends. We're going to line him up in the slot. Heck, you can throw him out on the boundary if you had to. So I think his versatility changes kind of how the back end is going to look. And so really, in my opinion, unless a 6th corner just absolutely stands out, I think that 5th safety spot, because Akins is a safety, and he's going to be on the field. And so you're looking at, I think, what's his name, Maurice Lucas got on the field last year. Torrey McTyer played as a corner. I think that could be your 5th guy. So, I think there's some guys battling, and I don't think it's necessarily for a cornerback spot. I think there's also, they've got to think, all right, well, we can keep an extra safety and play that way. And I do find it interesting that they interviewed Armstrong, and they said he had only been practicing on the boundary. He had not been playing any of the slot. That may be kind of what they're saying. All right, we've got some guys who can play in the slot. We've got McCain, he's our main guy. We've got Fitzpatrick, we can bring down in the slot if we have to. We need some boundary corners. And so, I think they're going to keep. They're definitely keeping 5 corners for sure. That 6th spot is going to be, who is that? Are they going to keep strictly a safety like Lucas, or are they going to bring in an extra corner and just keep 4 safeties? So that I have no idea. I know people were raving about Jalen Davis and talking about how he lives and he played well. So I don't know. I think Armstrong has a leg up because he's a draft pick. But then again, Torrey McTyer came in last year and he got snaps on defense as an undrafted free agent. So was it him or Lucas that had like appendicitis or something and went on IR? One of them did something like that. I can't remember, but
that sounds familiar.
It was a rookie guy last year that was an undrafted free agent that made the team and then got put on IR for some reason late in the year. And it may have been Lucas, if I remember right. But so I think that's how I would look at it. They've got some versatility back there that they can do. And Chad's absolutely right. Probably the biggest roster battle in the entire team is going to be that number 2 cornerback spot. And it's really only going to make the team better because either it's McCain, he's got the contract and he's willing to prove that, hey, I'm worth that contract. I can play boundary as well as a nickel. It's Lippett wanting to prove he's back from injury. It's Tankersley wanting to say, hey, I'm not losing the starting job. He even said in a press conference that he feels that the job is his and his to lose. He's a starter. So that's going to be absolutely exciting to watch. So, yeah.
Alrighty then. So let's just go. Well, actually, before we move to the next position, so I named off a bunch of players who could potentially come in if necessary if somebody got hurt and they need another corner. I mentioned guys like again Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Kayvon Webster, Bashawn Breeland, Adam Jones, Jeremy Lane. Is there any of those guys who you would absolutely not want on the team?
Pac-Man Jones, hands down. That's not a player we want on the team. He's past his prime and he's consistently trouble. So it'd have to be some pretty. We have to drop a couple corners and desperately need a veteran to sign Pac-Man Jones.
And you agree?
It depends on the season. I mean, if the Dolphins are, it looks like that they're out of the race, and somebody gets hurt at that point, then I'm for bringing a practice squad guy or letting one of these young guys play. Kind of like we did last year at the end of the year with Spells. When he's got nothing to lose, don't waste it on a veteran guy. Now, if it's mid-season, the Dolphins in the playoff hunt, I'll think a guy like Jeremy Lane, who's played in Seattle, played that press coverage that they want to do a little bit. I think he's the guy to take a look at. I don't know about Rodgers-Cromartie. I don't know what happened there with the Giants, why they got rid of him, but Jeremy Lane's an intriguing name. He always, anytime I play a Madden franchise, he always ends up on my team somehow. So that would just be kind of funny to me, but he's a guy I think would fit schematically, at least as a boundary guy, if they needed him. But let's hope they don't. I'm off the playing the young guys, unless you just don't have a lot of potential at a particular position, then don't go out and get the veterans. Let the young guys play. Because, because you can bring that one guy in like Lawrence Timmons, who, has had his career. There's not any potential there. You're just hoping kind of be a status quo thing. And then, you trade for Stephon Anthony, who's still in snaps from him toward the end of the season. At what point are you like, all right, let's get Timmons to get off the field and we're going to play Anthony because we need to see what he can do. So I'm that way in just about every position. That's why I'm not a big fan of Osweiler or even the other guy they brought in from the Jets.
Bryce Petty. Sandwich man.
Let Fells play. Let these young guys play. See what you've got because you never know. I mean, how do we know that, Armstrong, who was a 6th-round pick, I mean, a lot of people are like, who is this guy? How do we know that something happens and he comes, he sits on the bench while you're bringing a veteran like Jeremy Lane, who's, what you're kind of going to get from him. What if you play Armstrong instead and he turns out to be a true diamond in the rough?
You mean a Brent Grimes, who he says he models his game after? That's the funniest thing of all, is that he models his game after Brent Grimes. It's like, oh my God, what if we got Brent Grimes too?
Hey, I will take the on the field Brent Grimes all the time. You can leave the other stuff at home.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can get, you never know. I mean, that was the way it was with the Patriots. They were battling out between like the backup quarterback spot, and they had some schmuck named Tom Brady sitting on the bench, and then Drew Bledsoe gets knocked out of the game, and then suddenly Tom Brady's been a thorn in everybody's side for 2 decades. So how do we know that, we have the guys on there, and this young guy that nobody knows about suddenly turns out to be a superstar kind of player? I mean, Richard Sherman was a 5th-round pick. Ran a slow 40 time. He wasn't supposed to be anything. One of the best cornerbacks in the game. So, I'm also letting the young guys play. So unless it's just they need a veteran guy in there for whatever reason, just let them guys stay at home, pick up a young guys that you've got on the team, and play them.
All right, then. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and move on. Next position, please. We're going to the safety position. All right, so we already talked a little bit about it just because of the whole Minkah Fitzpatrick angle, so we can kind of breeze through here, I think. So obviously, safety positions, we have Rashad Jones, we have Minkah Fitzpatrick, we have TJ McDonald, and then you have other options, again, Walt Aikens, Maurice Smith, Trey Alston, And that's about it. So Michael Thomas is gone, y'all. So Walt Aikens has to be the new Michael Thomas. So he's going to be the safety there. We have TJ McDonald. He's going to stay. Obviously, Rashad Jones is going to stay. Fitzpatrick is supposed to play safety. And then, of course, Aikens. So do you have any other safeties? Because if you're going to count Fitzpatrick as essentially the sixth guy, then who's the fifth safety?
I think they're keeping Lucas is going to be the one in the mix. I think he's a pretty solid special teams player.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, I think he'll be in the mix to make the team because of his special teams. Because you can't discount guys that are good on special teams, and losing Michael Thomas is going to hurt because he was one of the best special teams players on our team, and that's why Walt Aikens is going to make this team. He is a very good special teams player, and that's his bread and butter, if you will.
Oh yeah, Walt's the new Michael Thomas. There's not even
he's going to have to be.
Yeah.
So, but last year we only had TJ McDonald for half the season, and we're going to have him all year, and he's a very talented football player. So they're going to have to be creative on how they use all these guys, and I think you've got to have Minkah on the field because of what he allows your defense to do. You can put him on any player on offense for coverage. He can come up and play press man to man. He can cover the tight ends. He can cover the backs, and that allows you to do things like you can do a corner blitz and feel good about leaving Minkah out there one-on-one. And if your cornerback gets picked up by the back and that quarterback gets time, you've got a guy like Minkah who can handle man-to-man coverage. And so it'll open the door what they can do on defense a tremendous amount. That's why I think he'll be on the field just moving around, and the quarterbacks are not going to ever be entirely sure what Minkah's doing, what position he's playing, pre-snap. And so that's the big 350.
It boils down to how creative Matt Burke is at this point.
Well, he's got some players now where he can be very creative. So when you got a guy like Jerome Baker who can cover at linebacker, and a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick who can pretty much do everything, you can really disguise a lot of stuff with those type of players. So it should be exciting. I don't think they're going to keep more than 5 safeties. Obviously, they're going to keep the 4. You're going to get Walt Aikens with Minkah, TJ McDonald, and Rashad Jones. Those guys are going to get kept, and I do think because Minkah can cover in a corner position, I think that will make them maybe want to keep a Jordan Lucas. Lucas is probably going to be right around that 52 or 53 guy on the bubble if he makes it or not. And if somebody like Jalen or Armstrong, those guys look really good, they'll get that 53rd spot. If they look like rookies, like I expect they will, they'll probably be practice squad guys early on, so they can work with them. That's what it takes a while in the NFL to get good at corners. So I don't expect those guys to come in and be playing a lot of snaps this year, but I do expect them to make the practice squad and to bring those guys along maybe for next year to be a 4th or 5th corner. Free agency, I don't see them doing anything with the 3 studs on the team right now. We have 3 starting caliber safeties with TJ McDonald. I don't see us going out and paying a veteran. I mean, Kenny Vaccaro, if I say his name right, the guy, I don't know, when he get drafted 4 or 5 years ago, number 1 pick.
Something like that.
I think he's still out there, and he's a very capable safety. And I think Miami was going to seriously consider paying him and signing him to be another solid safety. But now that they drafted Minkah, I can't imagine they're going to pay him big money to come in. They have needs other places if they're going to spend any money. So I think we're pretty well set at safety.
Yep, I would agree with that. But I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to say Jordan Lucas doesn't make this football team. It's going to be either Maurice Smith, Torrey McTyer, or Jalen Davis and Cornell Armstrong. I don't think Lucas makes it. He hasn't done anything.
It's going to come down to special teams type players, and it wouldn't shock me if one of the receivers beat him out. That's something people don't think about is somebody like Drew Morgan, for example. He is competing against Jordan Lucas right now to be who's going to be your coverage guys on special teams, and whoever looks good on special teams is going to get the heads up, for those positions. So it wouldn't shock me at all if you're right, Lewis. I just was saying he's looked good on special teams in the past year, so that gives him a chance to make it as the 5th safety, but definitely no lock.
Duke, your safeties?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with what Chad said there. I think we've got 5. There's going to be 5 cornerbacks for sure. and 4 safeties for sure. That 10th defensive back position is either going to be a 5th safety or a 6th corner. And so it depends on kind of how they view what they want to do with Fitzpatrick, what they want to do with the corners that they've got. Do they need a backup slot guy, whatever they do there. I do think that Lucas did come in and play some free safety. And while I know that I've seen a lot of talk about, Fitzpatrick playing the free safety role, which he will, I don't think that's necessarily all he's going to do. He's not going to be like Earl Thomas, where he's just defending the back end all the time, playing center field back there. I think they're going to move him around. He moved around a lot at Alabama. And really, we've got 3 safeties that, like Chad said, you don't know what they're going to do pre-snap. Is Jones going to drop back and play free safety? Is McDonald? It's Fitzpatrick. Who's going to be playing in that linebacker spot that's coming up to the line of scrimmage? Is it McDonald? Is it going to be Jones? Fitzpatrick did that in college. So they've got some versatility there. They really don't have a true free safety, and I think Lucas can be that. Maurice, I should say. It is
Maurice,
Lucas, right?
Maurice Smith, Jordan Luke. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
it's so tight right there.
Smith. All right. Smith. All I remember is he was number 2 in preseason last year. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think they keep him, and then whoever the 5th corner, that's Armstrong or Davis or whoever. So I think I think you've got 5 safeties because Fitzpatrick can do a lot of stuff. And I think, Smith does play some special teams and can excel there. And that's Aiken's crew now. I know I'm going to shift positions here, but that also brings up another guy in the linebacker position, and that's Mike Hull, because he's a special teams stud, and if he's going to stay, it's because of that, or they get somebody else. But I'm going with 5 corners and 5 safeties.
All righty. Then moving right along, going to the linebacker position. We'll get to the defensive line very shortly. All right, so we got plenty of linebackers to choose from here. We got, of course, we have our guys who are going to be starting, and like it or not, it is going to consist of Kiko Alonso as one of them. And then you have Raekwon McMillan, who's going to be the other one. And then you have a choice between the likes of Quentin Poling, who was just drafted, Jerome Baker, Terrence Garvin, formerly of the Seahawks, and he might actually be a bit of a surprise. And then Kason Collins and Mike McCray, who's getting a lot of talk about him, actually. So I guess now it boils down to exactly how many linebackers are you keeping on this team? Because where's Mike Hall? I know he's supposed to be on here somewhere. I think the roster needs some editing or something. Because Mike Hall didn't get released, did he? He's still around. Yeah, he's listed as an outside linebacker. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on here. It's like, why is there linebacker and then outside linebacker? Okay, so yeah, adding to that list, Mike Hall, Stephon Anthony, and Chase Allen. So we got some guys here. Okay, Chad, who's staying as a linebacker? Because we know we have our starting guys. Who's going to be depth?
It's going to be that's probably the second biggest battle, I would say, in training camp. It's not a starting position, but Quentin Poling is probably going to be going head-to-head with Mike Hall and to an extent Chase Allen, and they're not keeping all 3 of those guys. It's going to be which one of those guys appears that he could come in and play middle linebacker if needed. Mike Hall and Chase Allen have both proven that they can handle run support. They're limited in pass coverage, so I have to think if Quentin Poling has a little more speed and versatility, he's going to get the hands up being a rookie. But Mike Cole and Chase Allen are not. They're not tacklers. Really scrubs.
They're good. They're good. They're good at tackling, which is important now. Tackle.
And so one of those 3, all 3 of those guys are not making this team though. So maybe Quentin Poling will get stashed on the practice squad. But I can't even call it. I really like Mike Hall. I think he's a really hard-working football player, and you feel comfortable that he can play in a limited basis if he has to come in, and he'll be a competent tackler. And that's just a tough call with those 3 guys. I mean, for sure you're keeping Jerome Baker, Raekwon McMillan, and Kiko Alonso. Those are going to be your 3 primary running backs. But
it's going to be between Anthony. It's Anthony and Baker. Anthony and Baker.
Yeah, well, they're going to keep all 4 of those guys though. All 4 of those guys are making the team. Beyond that, I don't think anybody's secure, and I think we'll probably keep somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 linebackers, maybe 7, depending on how they're looking, but 6 for sure. And that those extra guys are going to be Hull, Pulling, and Allen, and I don't know which one of those guys isn't going to make it. That'll be a tough battle, but I would be stunned if Anthony didn't make the team. He may even be the starting linebacker. So him and Baker will be competing. If you want to call it the weak linebacker spot, you can. They'll be competing on that some, but our linebackers are going to be so versatile. I have a tough time defining where they're going to be. I mean, you'd think Raekwon McMillan will be our middle linebacker, but
he's going to be the middle because we tried, because with the way they did it last year, like Raekwon wasn't moving around. He was the middle. There was asking about it. He never
played last year though. He was hurt all year.
Well, that's true. But when he was training, when it was in camp and everything, he was exclusively middle. So I can't imagine they're going to change that now.
I think that's his job. But Kiko Alonso is a good middle linebacker. He wasn't a great weak side linebacker in coverage, and so I don't know how they're going to quite use him. I mean, Kiko Alonso is a very athletic, very fast linebacker, and I like him on the field, but the reality is he's not very competent in man-to-man coverage. You kind of got to keep him in a zone coverage scenario,
and he has a tendency to jump early. He doesn't anticipate well.
Right. So, but he's not a big linebacker, so I can't imagine they're going to put him in a strong side position out there. And so, Jerome Baker, on film, he's a rookie. He looked like he's one of the better coverage linebackers that we're going to have. So it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize the talent that we have. But, again, there's going to be one of those guys, with the only exception being Quentin Poling goes to the practice squad, and they keep both Hull and Chase Allen. But I got to give Hull the leg up on special teams, but I got to give Chase Allen the advantage because he actually played middle linebacker more last year as basically our backup middle linebacker. And again, Quentin Poling may be the most athletic of the 3. So your guess is good as mine on how those 3 will shake out after the top 4.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pick, of course, Raekwon's in the middle. I want Kiko to be on the strong side now just because I can't think of anywhere else to put him because I do want him there, but just not as a coverage guy. Just make him blitz. He can blitz. I think he can handle blitzing, so he can do that. And between Anthony and Baker, I think Anthony's going to get more snaps starting out, but Baker will get some peppered in there. And it's not like he doesn't have chemistry with Raekwon. He knows how Raekwon thinks and works, so he can play off of that. As for, again, I think that, because, mind you, I'm not keeping track, ladies and gentlemen, we're not keeping track of how many players we've picked so far. All of this is in the realm of what ifs. What if they do this? What if they do that? We don't know for sure yet, so we're not keeping track if we've got 53 or not. So we're just kind of looking at who could stay as opposed to who's going to be like the odd man out. So Hull and Allen definitely have an edge over Poling, at least on paper, just because they have more familiarity. But Poling is being looked at as another version of who is the next Zach Thomas. Like every time we do this, as a slightly undersized white linebacker, we always think, okay, he's the next Zach Thomas. So Poling is the next man on the block. So I don't know if he will be able to pull it off. I think he's got something there. A lot of people seem to really like him, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. I just don't know if he's going to be beating anybody yet. That's the thing I'm not sure about. There's too many factors here, and just how many linebackers are we going to keep? So I would think we're going to keep maybe 5, honestly, just because I would rather get more defensive backs on there just because they seem to get hurt more, and we use defensive backs more than I think we use linebackers, or at the very least we should be using defensive backs more than linebackers at this point, because this is the thing we have to think about. You guys mentioned it earlier when we were talking about safeties and corners. Again, Minkah Fitzpatrick. He changes so much on this defense and how they function. Minkah could effectively make it so that the Dolphins can run 3 safety defenses, which honestly is something that I think they should have been doing for a long time now. They should have gotten with the trend already. So Minkah on the field with TJ McDonald and Rashad Jones means that you don't need that third linebacker on the field. So it makes it less important to have an abundance of linebackers on the bench at any given time. I don't think we're going to be using, or at least I hope that Matt Burke realizes this, that we shouldn't be using 3 linebackers as much as we did last year. I think we should be using a lot more defensive backs, and I think we should, considering how, think about this for a second, and I'm pretty sure that this is true. I have to check the exact measurements, but TJ McDonald is bigger than Jerome Baker. Think about that for a second. So if we're speaking strictly size, McDonald is more qualified to play linebacker than Baker is. So we have that to consider when it comes to exactly who's going to be on the roster at linebacker, because McDonald actually has the body of a linebacker, so to speak. So we can work with that. My guess is we keep 5. It's going to be Stephon Anthony, Kiko Alonso, Raekwon McMillan, and Jerome Baker, and then it's going to be a battle between Hull, Poling, and Allen. I think actually that Allen is going to win out. So, Duke, it's your move.
Well, and you guys have hit on is the fact that, I mean, you're not going to see a lot of free linebacker sets. And, you know, you think about it, and you've got guys like Baker and Anthony. You've got guys that you can use, and you think, oh, well, these versatile guys, I can do a lot of things with them. But there's going to be somebody out there that is either a high draft pick or a touted draft pick or a highly paid guy that's going to be on the bench at some point. Either it's McDonald, it's McCain, whoever, one of these guys that you're expecting, the starter caliber guy, is going to be on the bench, the more linebackers you have out there. So, you know, I think really when you're looking at starting linebackers, you've got 3 guys that you're looking at for 2 spots, and that's McMillan, Anthony, and Alonso. And I do believe the season will begin because McMillan had the injury and he just doesn't have the experience. I think you're going to see our 2 linebacker sets going to be Alonso and Anthony. They have the experience. They have the talent. They're going to be out there. And really that's a smart move because your talent is in the defensive, is in the backfield, not in the linebacker's position. So those right now are the 2 best guys. And we don't really know what McMillan, we hope he can be the guy, and we're expecting him to be. And the Dolphins think very highly of him, so he'll be out there eventually. And I think they'll eventually, you know, I like Anthony because the guy is big and fast. The guy can move, and you can put him in a position to do some things. But I think you're going to see. Really, they're going to probably start the season. And it depends who they play. You know, if you're playing a team like Buffalo or New York with these rookie quarterbacks, they're going to lean heavily on the run. You might see the linebackers in there more. You know, we get New England in the first quarter of the season, so you're probably going to see more defensive backs out there. So
I can only hope that Matt Burke is that smart.
I mean, you've got the defensive backs. You've got the defensive backs. I mean, you've got kind of got an embarrassment of riches there, at least in terms of potential. You've got guys like Tankersley and Lippett.
Duke, I agree wholeheartedly. It's just a matter of I don't know how much I trust Burke specifically. We have all the resources in the world.
I don't think it's just him. I mean, you saw how it was when Vance Joseph was the defensive coordinator. I mean, you can only work with so much. And let's face it, I mean, everybody wants to talk about Ryan Tannehill all the time. The defense is really not good. And I mean, you've got guys that are developing. You had guys like, you know, in Gase's first year, you had guys like Lippett. Howard didn't play very much. I mean, you just had these kind of odd mixtures. Rashad Jones missed half the season. And T.J. McDonald missed half the season last year. I mean, you're finally getting the secondary to maybe come around and be really good. I mean, McCain's developed. But the linebacker position is still kind of a weakness. And, you know, McMillan's supposed to help with that. Baker's supposed to help with that. Even Anthony's supposed to help with that. So, I think now that he's actually got something there to work with a little bit, I think he's going to kind of mold around. We're going to keep our weakness off the field, which is our linebacker position, and we're going to let our strength, which is supposed to be our defensive backs, kind of take charge. Now, we don't know who's going to step up and do what. I mean, for all we know, you know, Poling might come out and be awesome. Garvin might turn out to be awesome. Who knows? But I really think that you've got, I mean, they're keeping Baker's because of draft status. He's not going anywhere. So you've got those 4 guys. And I think the other 2 positions, and Baker's going to play special teams too, but the other 2 positions are going to be strictly special teams. And I think Chase Allen, I think it says a lot that he started last year and had the first tackle of the season, actually. He started, so I think he's going to make the team. So I think it's going to come down between Hull and Garvin and Poling and whoever else, how they excel on special teams, because they're probably not going to see the field on defense much, if at all. I think you can bring Chase Allen in as your strong side guy. This is a, run stuffer kind of dude. He's your 5th linebacker. That 6th one is just going to be there for special teams. I just don't think you're going to see that many linebackers see a lot of snaps on defense unless there's injuries, simply because they are not a strength and the defensive back position is.
All right, so we're going to get to the defensive line, and then we're going to call it a night because we've been going for a while. And we're going to probably get through defensive tackle pretty darn quick, only if we don't stop to make a detour, which we probably will, and I'll explain in a moment. Okay, so defensive tackle, going interior defensive line, we know for sure that we're going to have Devon Godshaw, and we know for sure we're going to have Jordan Phillips, and we know for sure we're going to have Akeem Spence and Vincent Taylor. Those are the 4 guys we know for sure are going to be on the roster. Whoever's starting, the only one I know for sure is Godshaw. After that, it's the just kind of throw your hands up because you just don't know. Well, that's going to be a training camp battle to watch who eventually emerges as a guy next to Godshaw. Other than those 4, you have guys like Anthony Moten, Jemias Pittman, and Gabe Wright. Those are the pure defensive tackle guys. And that's not even counting William Hayes, who can also play inside if necessary. And he will make the roster. I'm sure he will. So, I guess since that's what we're going to talk about, okay, assuming that those 4 are the guys who are going to be on the roster by the time the season starts, when we don't go and grab somebody like Jonathan Hankins, who, by the way, yes, is still on the open market despite all the hype around him, who is going to wind up next to Godshaw?
I think it's got to be Phillips right now. That's my number one concern on the team right now, Lewis, is I am worried about our defensive tackles. And I mean, maybe I'm hoping the coaches know something I don't, but I didn't see it enough out of Godshaw to feel like he's a dominant football player because he got to play beside Ndamukong Suh, and Suh commands double teams and scheming almost constantly. So it's not hard to look all right when you're beside somebody who requires that much attention on defense. And so now the question is Godshaw a dominant football player that requires a lot of double teams or not? And we really need Jordan Phillips to step up and be a very good defensive tackle right now with our current guys, because I don't see Vincent Taylor or Akeem Spence as any more than situational subs, depth. I don't think either one of those guys are starting caliber D tackles that you can feel like are going to come in and wreak havoc in the middle of that field. So as you know, Lewis, I still think getting Hankins would be a great move. I don't know what the issue is with him. Obviously, nobody has signed him, and defensive tackle is a premium position, just like offensive tackle. It's hard to get guys that are that big and that quick that can play it physically. And so a guy like Hankins, who's in his mid-20s, there must be something more to. He really wants a lot of money, or there's something we're not aware of that teams are staying away from him. But
all I can assume, Chad, is that it's the scheme, because when he went to the 4-3, he kind of fell on his face. So I guess that's what it is.
He's a really big guy. Hankins is. So he is more of a 3-4 interior tackle, but we'll see. But I right now, from what I see, is this team has a lot of faith right now in Jordan Phillips and Devon Godshaw. I know William Hayes can play some D tackle, but he's not a true D tackle. He's probably more of a guy that when it's second and 10 or third and 5 or more, you can come in and have him play D tackle because he's a better pass rusher. But you can't bring William Hayes in and expect him to anchor in against a power running football team. So it's Jordan Phillips is the guy right now. He's the biggest tackle we've got, I want to say, and he's by far the most talented of the bunch, and this is his contract year. So this is a really, really big year for Jordan Phillips to step up and kind of be that number one tackle alongside Devon Godshaw. So I still think we'll be watching what's out there on free agency. If these guys don't if our D tackles struggle in the preseason, it wouldn't shock me if we're making a run at Hankins or another D tackle to try to add into that mix.
I guess so, man. I just don't know because there's not a whole lot of guys available in free agency other than Hankins. I mean, I think Nick Fairley is still available. I'd have to check real quick. I know that he's another one of those Ndamukong Suh partners. Oh no, yeah, he's available, but the Saints cut him after they found a heart condition problem with him. So okay, great. Don't want that. Next, because otherwise we would have probably drafted Maurice Hurst, and if we don't need any more heart condition controversy. So, Duke, do you agree with Jordan Phillips being the starter next to Gottschall? I mean, I would, just because I know that Phillips can do really well. He just has really bad consistency issues.
Well, I mean, they're going to rotate him so much that, I mean, it's going to be starters kind of like in name only. I mean, the concern is that Ndamukong Suh played so many snaps. He was on the field all the time. So, you know, these guys haven't proven that they can be on the field that much. So, I mean, the rotational guys are going to get, you know, a lot of, you know, if Ndamukong Suh plays 800, 900 snaps, you know, you're not expecting Jordan Phillips to take 900 snaps. You know, it's going to be 400 snaps. And so a guy like, you know, Vincent Taylor is going to take those other 400. And Akeem Spence is going to take those other 400. And it's going to be spread around. So I think it's going to have to be one of those, the sum is greater than the parts deal. Because, you know, there's talent there. It's just unproven talent. And I mean, we like the guys and we're fans and we're optimistic, but
we're afraid they're going to get exposed without Suh there to help.
Well, that's a possibility too. And I mean, the run defense is bad with Suh. So, I mean, if it's bad, I mean, nobody's kind of expecting it to be great now. But you know, can these guys step up and do the thing that they need to do? And I think, you know, one of the things with Hankins is that even in the 4-3, they like guys that can penetrate. They don't want guys that can just take up blocks. And Suh could do that because, I mean, he was taking up blocks, but he was so good he could still penetrate doing that. You know, I don't think they want a block absorber, which, you know, I was a big fan of Vita Vea, and had Fitzpatrick not been available, that was the guy I wanted. And so, but he's that same kind of guy. So I don't know if the Dolphins would have wanted him. But I think it's going to be one of those that they're going to look at it. All right, you know, these guys are going to get a lot of snaps. The group is going to get a lot of snaps, and they're not going to have to lean on this one guy to dominate the whole thing like had happened in the past. So, and as far as who makes the team, I think it's those four. Now, I've heard some stuff about Gabe Wright that, you know, he's played well, so he could sneak in there. But and a lot of people are fans of that Pittman from, I think, Central Florida. Talking about how he could be a undrafted still. So, you know, I don't
think there's enough space on the roster. That's the problem.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, these are guys that can battle it out for that final spot. I mean, I like Vincent Taylor. He played last year. He plays on special teams too. That's one of the things that if you go to a game, you see things that you don't see on TV. And I remember being at that Monday night game in Carolina, and it was. I don't remember who the third guy was off the top of my head, but on the kickoff, it was Vincent Taylor and Brindle and one other guy were the three blockers on the kickoff. So, you know, like, that's kind of just weird to me. But so, I mean, he got some value there. He plays like that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, hopefully one of these guys can step up and prove that they're, you know, a starter caliber player, but my hunch is that, you know, next year's defensive tackle draft looks to be at least top heavy, first round heavy, and so I think that's where the Dolphins go.
That's what I was about to say. Is that I would say that defensive tackle has to be a priority in the next draft.
Well, yeah, I agree. you got to have something for this year. That's my concern. Well, I mean, just look at our defense, and we've got probably easily top 2 or 3 in terms of defensive end talent. We're ridiculously loaded at defensive end. We're going to be able to attack the quarterback all game. And, as Duke was pointing out, we have a lot of talent in our defensive backfield. We've with Minka there now, and we've got our corners really starting to develop in. They've been through a few years now. They're experienced. And we're playing against 2 teams in our division that have rookie quarterbacks more than likely that are going to be starting. If you're the offensive coordinator of the Jets, or you're the offensive coordinator of the Bills, I'm not feeling really good about dropping my quarterback against the Dolphins with these defensive ends bearing down on them and that defensive backfield prowling around out there. I'm going to try to power run the football, and that's the way teams are going to attack this defense, because they're going to want to make sure that these defensive tackles can support the run. And Duke's exactly right. Our defensive tackles, all of them, what their talent and they're designed to do is penetrate the gap. That means you've got to get into the backfield and disrupt the running game. We don't have that anchor that just makes it impossible to run the ball up the middle, because he just eats up the center and the guard, and you just can't run up the middle. And so I'm just telling you guys that that's the way the offenses are going to attack our defense right now. They're not going to try to outrun Kiko Alonso and Jerome Baker sideline to sideline, and they're not going to be throwing the ball up with Minka Fitzpatrick and Rashad Jones sitting back there. They're going to power run right at us, because Robert Quinn and Cam Wake and these guys will absolutely murder quarterbacks if they get into third and long situations. And these teams they're going to try to protect these young quarterbacks and run to try to keep the third downs and 3rd and 3s and 3rd and 4 manageables for these quarterbacks. So that's what it's going to come down to is can our defensive tackles stuff the running game?
And we had Dominican Sue on the team, and teams, there was still a bright flashing neon sign that said, "Run at me." Now it's like, some kind of, Black Friday sale or something going on. The team's going to be like, they had one of the best defensive tackles in the game, and we could still run on them. Now they don't. We're going to definitely run on them, especially a team like the Bills and the Jets, because number one, you can shorten the game, and you keep that rookie quarterback from being exposed. Although with the way quarterbacks for the Bills have played, it probably wouldn't hurt for them to drop back 50 times and throw it, because we'll make them look like an all-pro. Even if it's McCarron or Allen or whoever it is, throws 50 interceptions the rest of the year, they will throw 10 touchdowns against the Dolphins. Because, Thaddeus Lewis or whatever his name was. So,
we all remember that nightmare.
So but he's right. They're going to run the ball at the Dolphins, and they're going to see if those young guys can stuff the run. Now, I like what Godshaw did against the run, but it's that's just one guy. It's the other side, and if he's doing well, they're just going to double him, and it's going to be on the other guy. And Jordan Phillips has not shown enough in his time to say, hey, he has those flashes where whoever is defending him or whoever is blocking him just can't handle it. He just manhandles it and makes a play in the backfield. And on the very next play, he gets washed down the line of scrimmage like a 200-pound safety. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so it's on him to prove he can do it. You got to have Akeem Spence, who is a guy who can play, but he's you really want him as more depth than kind of a feature piece. And then Vincent Taylor, I know what you got with him. So, I don't know. And I think they're going to look at it in preseason, and I think that's probably why Hankins hasn't signed it. The teams are just waiting to see what they've got. And, if we go in a couple weeks preseason and teams are, running 200-300 yards against us, they're going to call Hankins up and say, look, we need you to come in here and stuff it around. So they will try something.
It's going to, and as I've been saying, with our defense, this is all about the offense more than the defense, because nothing protects your defensive tackles getting the ball pounded at them more than scoring points. And so if Ryan Tannehill being back, for the first time in a year and a half, and all these new receivers and offensive weapons that Adam Gase has now, it's vital for them to score points. And, if you come into the game and in the first half, you've got, somewhere between 14 and 21 points thrown up on the board, and maybe get up 10 points on a team, it becomes an insignificant point how effectively they can run the football up the middle and get 3 yards pop, because now they've got to score points to keep up. And then that's the way this team is designed to win, is force other teams to have to throw the football and use our pass rushers and our defensive backs to control the game. And we, unfortunately, ever since Adam Gase has been here, we have not had much good offense, and so you're consistently playing in these games that are tight. And that's how teams like Buffalo and New York are able to play with us, because those teams don't have good offenses, and they don't this year. I mean, Buffalo's offense on paper, they've weakened their offensive line. Their wide receiver talent doesn't come out to me and scream like, wow, these are really good wide receivers, and they're throwing a rookie quarterback in there. You absolutely want to throw up 28 points, 35 points in the Buffalo game and force their rookies to try to execute when they've got to pass. You want them in the shotgun having to pass, and our defense will have a field day in that scenario, because we really have elite pass rushing defensive end and a good D-back. But if our offense again struggles this year and we're just not putting points on the board, absolutely these teams are going to continue to just pound the ball at our defensive tackles, because that's why I want to get somebody like Hankins, just in case our offense has a game where we're struggling and we need to be able to put a defensive tackle in that just makes it really hard to run up the middle. Because we have more speed this year. We've had injuries at linebacker, and this year, if you put Baker or Anthony with Alonzo and McMillan out on the field, our linebackers can really close down those perimeter stretch type zone runs. But those linebackers become quickly undersized if you're just pounding the ball right off the guard tackle gap or right between guard center. That's where you need your defensive tackles, and they're controlling the interior of the line. And I just don't know that our defensive tackles are built right now to control the interior of the line if a team just wants to pound it. That's the way you want to attack our linebackers. You don't want to try to outrun Jerome Baker or Kiko Alonso around the outside. You want to put in a 230-pound back and go right at them and try to average 3 to 4 yards a pop right up the middle.
Yeah, I mean, you want the offense wants them to get to the second level, because our linebackers aren't exactly the stack and shed type,
right,
with the exception of possibly McMillan. So I think his presence, if he plays like we expect him to play, I think he will help out, because he will be a guy that can take on these blocks and stuff to run. I remember kind of jokingly, if I wanted Zach Cunningham, that was a guy that I really liked. And when they drafted McMillan, and I think I was talking with Lewis Mason in a podcast, and that's what was the difference between the two. I said, well, McMillan tackles. Cunningham missed a lot of tackles and McMillan doesn't. So I think that's one thing they're banking on. But you're right, it's kind of a dangerous game. There's not really one strong side there, hoping that everything kind of balances out. But if you think back to 2016, when things really got going for the team, they were playing and winning a lot of these close games. But, I mean, the game shouldn't really have been close. I mean, they pretty much dominated the 49ers, who were one of the worst teams in the league, and they had it was like 31-14 something lead on them in the fourth quarter, and the defense just couldn't hang on. And I think now, Gase is kind of saying, hey, if we can get back to that point where we can get in, hey, let's get a 31-14 lead on some teams. I think he's got the defense now. It says, hey, go ahead. We'll put these points up. You're not going to throw on us. We're going to make life miserable for you if you try to throw on us. But the offense has got to do it. So, I'm getting nervous.
It all factors in, guys. So, okay, so we've closed in on 2 hours, so let's hurry up and get this done. We know who punter and kicker is, although I would love for Matt Darr to come back and replace Hawk, but that's just me. But let's go ahead and finish this off. Defensive end, last position. There's a lot of defensive ends, guys. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started. Cameron Wake, of course, he's coming back, and he's like the ageless wonder. I still expect him to be in Miami for at least a couple more years, just because he's that good. Robert Quinn, he's doing, let's just say he's probably doing better so far than Mario Williams was when he first showed up. So that's a good thing. William Hayes is going to be a defensive end / tackle. Charles Harris, Andre Branch, and then you have guys like Cameron Malveaux, who has something to offer, I think, based on what I watched from him. And then you have guys like Quincy Redmond, Claude Mathieu, and Jonathan Woodard. I don't know how much I should expect out of those three, but just off of the first five guys alone, you have Quinn, Hayes, Harris, Branch, Wake, and I would hope that Malveaux gets to stick around too because he can pass rush. That's 6 defensive ends. I know that there's always told that you can never have too many pass rushers, but gentlemen, do we have too many pass rushers?
No. It's unbelievable, our depth right now. And I think, everybody was shocked, as was I, because we had invested a number 1 pick in Charles Harris, but Robert Quinn is very good. And so if you put him out on the wide 9 type of pass rush scheme the Dolphins like to employ, that is what he excels at. And so I think probably what you're going to see this year is I think you're going to see more Charles Harris and maybe Andre Branch on the field a little bit more, and along with William Hayes, of course, and a little bit less Cameron Wake. And I don't think you want Cameron Wake in the game unless it's a passing situation. And so I think that's what you'll see the team doing.
Chad, can I interject real quick? Yeah. We tried that once before. Like Gase tried to keep Wake fresh, so to speak, and it really didn't work out so good.
Well, we've hadn't had the same talent levels, but I really don't see Cameron Wake any better at defending the run than Andre Branch or Charles Harris. Personally, definitely not near as good as William Hayes. So I don't see the benefit of having him on the field in, especially against teams that just look like they want to really move the football, but run the football. But that's just me. With where he's at age wise and what we have on our team for talent levels, we have so many good defensive ends. I like Cameron Wake coming in that fourth quarter when the team has to throw the football and having a really fresh, ready to go Cameron Wake who hasn't played a lot of snaps during the game yet, and letting him and Robert Quinn just attack the quarterback relentless. But however you shake it, we've got 4 defensive ends that would start on probably easily over half this team in the league. If any one of our 4 defensive ends would be a start. Absolutely. He's not a guy who's a Pro Bowler, but defensive ends are not easy commodity to get in the NFL. That's why they get drafted so high all the time. Andre Branch would probably start on half the teams in the NFL at the defensive end spot. He's just a solid player. And he's probably 4th on our depth chart as a pass rusher right now. He's probably a little bit better as an all-around defensive end than Charles Harris yet. But it's exciting because one is it's Miami. So there's a lot of the games that get into that heat situation. And you've all watched those games in the past with Miami where you get into the fourth quarter and the defense has been on the field a lot. And, these teams drop back and the quarterback just sits back there waiting for people to get open because your defense just can't generate a pass rush on them. And we definitely should not have many of those scenarios this year because we could probably play defense all day long and effectively rush the passer with the depth we have at defensive end right now.
So how many are you keeping? All of them?
Well, you're keeping the 5 for sure. William Hayes is going to stay as a run stuffer, inside, outside, and you're going to keep Harris, Quinn, Wake, and Harris. And so I don't think you're going to keep a lot more than that because I don't know unless there's somebody who really stands out of nowhere. I just don't see the need for it. I think you're going to want to use other positions, and anybody else is not going to be getting snaps over those 4 guys. And, Charles Harris is a young football player who you're developing, and I suspect Robert Quinn, the game plan with him is going to be to have him around for at least 2 to 3 more years. And so they're not in a pressure situation where they got to develop a young player either to work in there for the snaps. So it had to be a pretty impressive defensive end to want to keep over maybe an extra wide receiver or an extra linebacker on this team.
Okay, how about you, Duke? Okay, maybe the question should be, do you let Wake start or do you let him sit on the bench until he's needed?
I mean, you just play him. I mean, he's one of those guys that he just needs to be on the field and play. I mean, I don't think he's, to me, the edge setting, defensive end stuff is a little bit overplayed. I think people were worried about with Charles Harris because he was a smaller guy, but I mean, Wake's not exactly a small dude. I mean, he's 6'3", like 270, probably 280. And he's a strong dude. I mean, just let the guy play. And I agree with Chad. You need him to stay fresh. And I think they're going to rotate these guys in so much. I mean, I think you're going to see a variety of packages and a variety of things coming in. And you could really see a defensive line on like a 3rd and long situation of 4 defensive ends, where William Hayes is kind of will play more of a one technique because he's the biggest of the group. Move Branch inside. I mean, heck, the walk-off safety from a few years ago in Cincinnati, or against Cincinnati, that was Wake. That was a stunt where he came inside and blew up the guard. So any of these guys can do that. I think you're going to see a lot of that kind of stuff. The question to me is, do you keep a 6th defensive end? And I like Malveaux. I thought what I saw of him last year, he was like a guy that, you could develop, maybe get something out of. So I guess the question there is, if you keep 10, because the way I kind of, you've got 50 roster spots. You've got your 3 specialists. I don't even count those guys. You got 50 roster spots. And so I posted that in the comments on YouTube. You got 25, I say 25 on offense, 25 on defense, if you even it out. So you got 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 receivers, 4 tight ends, and 9 offensive linemen. That's 25, I believe. And then you've got 10 defensive backs, 6 linebackers, and 9 defensive linemen. That's 25. So you're either going to have to cut a wide receiver, cut a linebacker, an offensive lineman to keep that 6th, because that 4th running back's really a special teams guy, or a tight end in order to get that 6th defensive back. So the question is, if you keep Malveaux, in my opinion, he's kind of he's in that between 50 and 53 spot. Who does he replace in that group? But I'm with you. I mean, I like him. But, unless he's just a special teams guy, I mean, how much is he really going to see the field with the other 5 guys that we have? I mean, it's like Chad said, we it's not like we have some starters and good depth. I mean, we have 4 defensive ends that could start. So those guys are going to see the field. And then you've got William Hayes, who's probably starter caliber. So you really got 5 guys that 6th guy even going to see the field at all. So that it becomes a special teams thing. So I don't know, but I just hope Matt Burke's creative enough that he can use these guys and move them around. At some point, I mean, it's kind of like you got too many pieces to work with. At some point, you just got to, say, all right, I'm going to run with make it simple and just run with this and go. But I don't know. It's going to be exciting to see how they employ things. And, I mean, I think they've got a, I'm hoping they're kind of have an eye toward the future a little bit. A pick like Fitzpatrick, I mean, nothing, I love Rashad Jones, but he's a veteran player. He's up there in years. How much longer is he going to play at a high level? You start thinking, and wait, he's, an ageless wonder. You've got to get these people in. So I think they're trying to build depth and build the youth at the same time. At least that's what I'm hoping they're doing. I don't know, man. I guess one of the benefits, of getting older is that the older you get, faster time goes, and it seems like, man, training camp's so far away, and it's really like, what, a week?
A couple weeks, yeah.
Rookies start back, what, the
18th? I think they start early, but I think it was either the 18th or the 16th. I can't remember which.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to report next week. So they're not actually going to get on the field to the end of the month, but yeah, I mean, so we're not that far away from football. So I'm excited about that.
I'm definitely excited about it too. Okay, well, before we call it here, okay, let's go back to the Cameron Wake thing. And by the way, Matt Burke and Jim Schwartz have a connection, so hopefully Burke has learned from Schwartz and he can do something with that. But anyway, all right, so we know that they're going to rotate guys in, but if you are the Dolphins and you are Matt Burke, we know that we want to keep Wake fresh-ish, but okay, how often do you rotate him out? Like, how much do you use Cameron Wake? Because I think half of the reason that teams do what they do so much against Miami is because they are afraid of Cameron Wake. If you remove Wake too much, they're going to stop thinking of him as a big deal, and they're going to start doing other things.
I don't know if that's true, Louis. I think it completely depends on who you're playing. If you're playing a team like, say, the Patriots, you suspect a team like that's just going to throw the football a lot because they've got Tom Brady. And so you might be more inclined to keep Cameron Wake on the field a little bit more. But especially if you're playing like the Bills or the Jets, as I was alluding to, those teams don't want to throw the football. And we have Robert Quinn now. And I honestly, going into this year, as much as amazing as Cameron Wake is, I think he's the second best pass rusher on the team now. I think Robert Quinn is our best pass rusher. I just believe that. I think Robert Quinn is a better pass rusher. I know it's hard to listen to, but
I'll agree with that. I mean, I think overall talent-wise, just, if you take everything into account, including age, I think, and Robert Quinn's had injury issues, but if he's 100% and he's healthy, I mean, he is just as, if not more talented than Cameron Wake. And that's not to say Cameron Wake's not talented. That's just to say Robert Quinn is very talented.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Can't do it.
The good news is they're both very good. They're both very good pass rushers. My question though for you, Louis, is you want Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake on the field when you know the teams are going to pass. So you want those two guys on the field for those snaps. And I'm not talking about 3rd and 12 where you can bring Charles Harris on the field and have him rush from the D tackle position. I'm talking about 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 7s. That's when you want Cameron Wake and Robert Quinn on the field together rushing the passer. When it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 8, I don't know that Cameron Wake or Robert Quinn are that much better of a defensive end than Charles Harris or Andre Branch, because I don't think they're way better at stopping the run than those two guys are. And you don't lose that much with Robert Harris or Andre Branch rushing the passer. If a team drives back, they're still very good defensive ends. And so I'm trying to balance snaps.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, but I have to clarify. Did you mean Robert Quinn is a better defensive end or better pass rusher, strictly?
Than Cameron Wake? At this point in their careers, I think Robert Quinn is better at both than Cameron Wake. And to be clear, though, I think Cameron Wake's still very good. If you look at Robert Quinn's career in the scheme, you got to keep in mind he got moved to play linebacker last year or two for the Rams. When he was playing in this scheme, look at his sack totals. Look at what he did. He was dominant. And so he's still a young guy. He's fully healthy right now. I just tell you right now, I wouldn't want to be attempting to have a team rely just on their offensive tackle or anything less than an offensive tackle to try to block Robert Quinn coming in there. And so like I said, your ideal scenario for the Dolphins is knowing the teams are in passing situations and making sure you have Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake both healthy coming from both directions, because they're the two best pass rushers on the team. All around defensive ends, I don't know that there's a huge difference between the top four. Obviously, William Hayes is the best of the five at stopping the run. That's what he specializes in. But if you're asking a 1st and 10, what defensive end is the best on the team to put out there in 1st and 10, I don't see any major difference between all four of them. If you're asking me which guy do I want pinning my ears back, rushing the quarterback on 3rd and 5 or long, I want Quinn and Wake in there every time.
Right. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. The only issue I had was you said that he was better than Wake. That's the part I'm having.
Look at the stack totals.
I know. I just can't do it. I can't do it. All right. Well, this is going to be a poll on Twitter, right? This has to be like something to discuss.
I hope they're competitive. I want to see Robert Quinn versus Cameron Wake to see who gets the most sacks this year. So.
Well, the one thing that I think that if you go back and watch, I DVR all the Dolphins games, and usually I'll keep one or two on there to watch during the offseason when I'm bored. Now I've got the Patriots game from last year because it was the best game from last year. And if you watch how the Patriots handled Wake, especially in the second half, he was practically doubled every time. They didn't have Gronk that game, but Dwayne Allen didn't do much either, and that's because he was in shipping weight most of the time. I mean, there was always somebody besides the right tackle hitting Cameron Wake at all times. And so you can't do that now with Robert Quinn. And so if the Dolphins can get a lead, they're big enough lead where teams are having to pass. If it's the second half of the game, the team is forced to pass to stay in there, then it's going to become pick your poison. Do you want who do you want to get the sack? Do you want Quinn or do you want Wake to do it? I mean, that's pretty much the choices they're going to have. And especially when you've got guys like Phillips, if you can keep a guy like that mentally fired up, a guy like Gottschall, these guys that can penetrate and get up the middle. I mean, if that's the case, if the offense pulls their weight and does what they're supposed to do, then it's going to become, it's the defense can kind of dictate what teams are going to do because of that defensive line, because of those pass rushers. And so, I mean, the beginning of the game, Wake may not see as many snaps because it's kind of even. They're running a lot more. But in those situations, they're going to have to keep extra blockers in, and therefore, fewer receivers, or they're going to have to take their chances with two pass rushers who are very good, who can get around the edge, who've proven they can do that. It's what do you want to do? So, every team that's going to play the Dolphins is going to hope we can keep it close and run the ball because they don't want those guys getting after them. And so, hate to say it, but that's even more pressure on Tannehill on the offense.
Well, let me just say this. I sincerely hope that we can have this discussion of who's better between Quinn and Wake as the season goes on, just because I recall it wasn't that long ago when we went in and grabbed another supposed superstar defensive end in Mario Williams, thinking that we were going to have that Wake-Williams combo that would make offenses have fits. And let's just say that didn't turn out so well. So I hope that this is not in that situation again.
Well, and as Chad pointed out, with Williams, he was already losing a step at that point. I don't think Quinn has lost a step. He was just playing out of position. And as a stand-up linebacker. And some people can do that.
Wasn't Williams playing out of position too? That was why he was upset with Rex Ryan in the first place?
They said that, but I think he was, because he's a little bit different player. He was more of a 5-tech, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. He played more of a 5-tech than he did an actual edge rusher. He wasn't standing up as much. And if you watched him play, you can just tell he just lost a step. From all the reports, from minicamp, is that Quinn has not lost a step. So you're putting him back to position. And I saw this on Twitter. Someone was talking about how they showed a clip from the Rams, how he was standing up. I think he was coming from the left side, and he was standing up, and it wasn't comfortable, so he put his hand down on the ground and rushed, and he made a play, and that's just something he's comfortable doing. So I think if you can get him back there, if he can stay healthy and get him back where he's rushing with his hand in the dirt, then he's got the ability to do the same things that Wake does. I think he's not going to be a bust of that nature simply because he's still young and he hasn't really lost anything. I think his is truly more of a position shift than it was with Williams. I mean, there were people who were saying, well, Williams is going to be a bust simply because he was already losing a step in Buffalo, and that may have been why they were using him more as a kind of that, just absorbing blocks over there on the end as more of a 5-tech than actual rushing passers. Because, I mean, how old was he when he joined it off, like 31 or something?
We had a declining Mario Williams, but and one thing else that probably drive you crazy, Lewis, is the best athlete. Quinn would be right up there, but I think Charles Harris is the best athlete of our defensive ends right now. If you want me,
well, I wouldn't be upset about that. No, I wouldn't be upset about because there are a lot of athletes on the defense.
Well, I'm just saying if I'm going to take one of our top 4 defensive ends to run down a quarterback that's out of the pocket or drop one back and dropping your defensive back into a zone coverage and blitzing a linebacker, Charles Harris is far better than Cameron Wake at running a quarterback down.
No, I don't mind that. That I don't mind.
That's another reason why I like keeping Cameron Wake saved, specifically when you know the quarterback's dropping back to pass, because Cameron Wake's probably his strongest suit is beating an offensive tackle and getting into the pocket from the edge. And so that's what I want him doing when you know that's the situation to put him in. Not because can't play defensive end. I like saving him. That's what kind of luxury we have because there isn't this big drop off if you have Cameron Wake on the sideline with Charles Harris or Andre Branch in there for him. You're just saving him for the best absolute times to use him in the game. And so, you want Cameron Wake fresh and healthy. I know he's Superman. I know he's in amazing shape, but he is in his late 30s, and you want him healthy and ready to go if you do get into that second half of the season and you're trying to make the playoffs or even get into the playoffs. That's when you really want a veteran like Cameron Wake really ready to play a lot more snaps. So I like it for both those reasons.
All right. Well, I'm still going to make a poll. We'll see what happens. But anyway, I think we're going to call it here. We've been going for 2.5 hours, gentlemen. Phew. So this is one of the longest shows we've ever done. I think the only thing that's been longer was our live draft coverage back in it was a few years ago, actually. But anyway, this was a good show, though. I didn't know we were going to make it all through the roster. But, I mean, hey, a little bit extra time doesn't hurt anybody. And I'm sure that we're going to have more content coming. I'm working on it, folks. I'm working on it. So anyway, let's see. Any final thoughts before I hit the stop button?
I don't have any, Lewis. I'm ready for the training camp to get here. And as I started with the show, I'll say it again. It's good off season because there's no news. No news is good news when it comes to nobody getting PED trouble or legal trouble.
And Duke?
I'm ready for it to start.
And so am I. So thank you all so much for joining us. And of course, the show will be available on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud very soon. So keep an eye out for that. And there will be more stuff coming on PhinManiacs very soon. So thank you all so much for joining us. And for myself, my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum, and our special panelist guest, Chris Duke Early, we will see you all next time for another episode of PhinManiacs Live. Good night.